Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work, so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Anybody really should tell Adam. See you at the garage. Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work, so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Anybody really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
We ran 500 miles at Darlington just weeks ago, but now we've gone down under to a land of the kilometer, meaning it's time to do 500 kilometers around Bathurst. That equates to 81 laps around this punishing circuit in these punishing cars, and the championship battle is still very alive, with just 2 rounds remaining in the major series in 2025. Welcome to Pitstop TV and the virtual Bathurst, New South Wales. I'm Andrew Cardinale IV with Blue Car alongside. It is a pleasure to join you for coverage of the 2025 Major Series at Bathurst. Today's coverage from Bathurst is brought to you by the Major Series, by Majors Garage, and by Whiplash Simcams. 500 kilometers, 81 laps at Bathurst. That's a long time. Frankly, that's about 3 hours of racing, depending on the lap times, and if we get any safety cars, we'll get into all of that in a moment. But, you know, talking about this racetrack and how punishing it truly is, Blue, here's a look at it from above with the track map that we use every week. This place is so difficult to get around, and that's just at road speeds, you know, street speeds, if you will, as this is a public road when it's not being raced on. This is a challenging racetrack. You wrap it all together in this 3.8 or 6.2, well, 3.8 mile or 6.2 kilometer lap, and it's so tough.
It's a deceiving one, that's for sure. You see, you got some long straights here, but 2 of them, including the pit straight here. And the end of this circuit looks real easy to get around, but it's just as hard as the start and the middle. It's a really deceiving track with a lot of blind corners, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a pileup, especially on that mountain.
So far, the Split 1 races have been pretty clean from what I've seen. I haven't watched the entirety of the broadcasts from last night with the international region on SimSpeed and earlier today with the European region on GSRC, but I watched what I could, at least, you know, bits here and there. And I saw a lot of clean racing, I must say, and I'm really hopeful that we can continue that trend here in the Americas region. I do believe this is probably the most stacked field, actually, of the bunch. I know the international region had an influx, of course, of Australians and New Zealanders, but I think from what I saw, at least, unless the numbers changed, or maybe I'm misremembering, I think we might have had the most entries here in Americas, and that always stacks the competition up in Split 1. So we've definitely got a lot to look forward to. Let's get quick into standings here. Actually, hang on, we got to go straight to the grid. We have standing start. That is part of something we're going to talk about, so let me get my tentacles in a row here. We are about to go racing, actually. I forgot. We are standing start, and that kind of constricts everything. That makes it a lot more difficult on us to get going with this one. So we will stand aside, basically, and let the start happen here, and then catch you all up on everything else here in a moment. But you've got cars on the grid. Let's go through the grid quickly. I hear revs. We're going to let this play in the background. We've already got revs. We're about to go racing here in the Bathurst 500 for the Major Series. So you can see where your favorite driver is starting by pre-cue, but lights out and away we go, as they say. We are racing down to turn number 1, Hell's Corner at Bathurst. Already from the get-go, Nathan Dowd has a great start. He gets away with the pole position. Ross Banfield second. I always forget these standing starts. They have that tight grid, and it just makes everything happen in a split second. Into turn number 2, single file for the most part. There were a couple of cars out in the dirt blue, but everybody looks clean so far.
You can see just how good away the front pack there got away. Just how one line they were compared to the back. You saw someone running off to the dirt over there. They were about 3 wide, it looked like, coming through turn 1.
Up the mountain for the first time. This is a true mountain road. Hopefully these cameras start to give you a bit of a respect for just how challenging this racetrack is. And I know the session time says 4 hours. Trust me, it'll update here in a moment. This is an 81 lap race, or 4 hours, I suppose, if it did go that long. But as the grid continues to tick away there on the bottom of the screen, we have 30 cars in this race. I want to talk to you quickly about Whiplash Simcam's race details. 81 laps, 500 kilometers, 100% fuel, unlimited tires, open setup. It's all the normal stuff we would expect. We do have a chance for full course yellows, and of course, you see the standing start there as well. We do have that small chance for full course yellows. We could see them. Basically, it's a chance for either 0, 1, 2, or 3. So this opening lap being clean so far over the mountain, as everybody gets up to speed, that's a good start.
always really happy to see the starts be green here. You see him being nice on the first lap.
Nathan Dowd is your race leader. One lap of racing just about wrapped up now with Ross Banfield, position number 2, Austin O'Neill in 3rd, Christian Challoner in 4th. What we haven't yet gotten to, and we'll talk about once we have a better moment under green flag racing, is the championship battle. It is a 22-point spread between Nathan Dowd and Christian Challoner, but we've got a car turned around. This is Dalton Fredericks. Remember him from Petit Le Mans and even the 6, or I guess the 24-ish hours of Road Atlanta. He was a lot of fun to watch, but already problems here on lap 1, now lap 2. So Fredericks here in the 45 car. Had a decent start, was in the top half of the field, was 13th at the start of the race. And then down here in Murray's corner, got loose and gets a tap from behind. And that is a quick spin for car 45.
Won't be surprised to see that coming through the protest one, but also the little bit of loose there reminds you just how powerful these V8s here are. It's quite the machine to handle.
I'm not sure actually who that was that tipped him around, but I do wonder if that might come back to bite that driver. That was Kenzie Vanderwerken, actually, one of the kind of special one-off entries in this round. And just a shot there. I do wonder if that's going to come back as a protest by Dalton Fredericks. I wouldn't be entirely surprised. I mean, it's lap 1. You know, you want drivers around you to be careful. But I could see that easily going either direction. Regardless, this is the front of the field, headed down the Conrad Straight once again and into the chase for just the second time in this 81-lap race. You see 3 Chevrolets at the front of the field. If you're brand new to supercar racing, they are down to just Chevrolets and Fords as far as manufacturers go. They are V8 supercars still, 6-speed transmissions, sequential, and they are just heavy boxes that have a ton of power and are really hard to handle on these road courses like this. But they're a ton of fun to drive once you start to gain more of a respect for them. It's interesting, through the international and European rounds, I felt like we saw a lot of Fords out front, but this America's crowd seems to favor the Chevrolet towards the front and then a bunch of Fords right in behind.
You know, that surprised me. I've always considered Ford the superior manufacturer throughout these 3, and I don't know, maybe I was just expecting more Fords, but I'm never not happy to see Chevrolet.
And of course, the Chevy Camaro did replace the Holden Commodore a few years back when this new set of regulations was introduced. Really glad we have this car on iRacing. Let's go on board with one of these cars. This is Ross Banfield in position number 2 as he tries to put chase here to Nathan Dowd. If we get this lap complete without too much trouble, I want to review the points to give everybody a respect for where things sit coming into this round. Usually we do so kind of during that pace lap. We didn't have a pace lap today. It's right to racing here at Bathurst. 3 laps in, well, nearly 3 laps in now.
We're on the 3rd lap, about 3 laps in. You see what we were talking about while they were getting ready to go green. Just such a windy, tough track. A lot of blind corners, you see it all around.
And as Banfield launches back down this long Conrad Straight, this, of course, was just a straight-up straightaway all the way down to Murray's Corner way back when, but as with a lot of circuits around the world in the 70s, 80s, 90s, chicanes were added to a lot of circuits. In this case, a chicane was added here in the form of the chase. You see it kind of there from this wide perspective on the fan cam, and I think it fits in so well. It feels very natural. It doesn't feel like a chicane that was added just for the sake of safety like we saw for a couple of iterations there at Spa for a handful of years. No, this chicane structure there in the chase feels very, very natural. But another lap complete here. I want to take a look at what's going on for this championship fight. We'll watch from high above here. But we got to talk about this because the Major Series Championship is pretty much decided in international and European time slots. But for the Americas, it's wide open still for this top two. Nathan Dowd and Christian Challoner. And I think Robert Nash is on the cusp of even being included technically. I think realistically, not quite in it. It's down to these two. Dowd has had the lead all season long. Challoner keeps trying to chip into it, but drop rounds and everything, and Dowd staying super consistent is making that tough.
I will say, though, Challoner seems to have been pulling out a few wins. I believe he won one here in Petit Le Mans a few races ago. What a drive from, I mean, everyone in that race, but especially Challoner, I remember pretty well.
Challoner won the Speedway 500 and then turned around and won the Southern 500 last round out. So those are Challoner's 2 wins this season. 2 big ones, including the last race we had at Darlington a few weeks ago. But the problem for Christian is Nathan continues to finish right behind him, even when Christian does beat Nathan on the racetrack, so it's been very, very tough in that way. Here's a look at the team standings with Giga Racing Team on top. That is Christian Challoner's team, I believe. Sector 5 Racing close behind, and that gap has been narrowing over the course of the last couple of rounds. There's a few more battles throughout the field, but the right half of the screen is pretty well decided. There are some close battles, and maybe we'll see some swaps, but for the most part, things kind of sit as they are down, the further you go, and with deficits like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, you can see what I mean. So as these cars get ripping down the Conrad Straight, speeds in excess of 170 miles per hour, we are starting to see a bit of a battle spark up for second, or at least we were. Austin O'Neill was putting pressure there for a moment on Ross Banfield, and these 4 have felt like the top 4 in the series the last, 2 or 3 rounds. Throw in Pataska on the oval rounds, but when you consider oval and road, it's been these 4 lately. No surprise, these 4 lead the way here with 4 laps complete so far at Mount Panorama.
And throughout my short time here, these all have been absolutely wonderful drivers to watch race, as is everyone. These 4, however, in the front here, really shine throughout the entire racing, no matter where we're at, whether it's an oval, a road circuit, or a little bit of both.
And later on in this broadcast, I think we'll likely revisit those point standings and give you more context when it gets down closer. But, right now the racing is more close together. Want to stay with the action a little more as there is a battle back here towards the back end of the field. This is for the 25th position or so. Shane Vickery, Joseph Cardamone, Bryce Roberts in that kind of chrome and red machine. He's now getting passed by Dalton Fredericks. That is for 27th. So Fredericks now has an opportunity here to start moving back through the field. 1 car off. That is Shane Vickery. He was the lead of the train. He'll become the caboose. Fredericks, meanwhile, 26th now on the back bumper, or close to it, of Joseph Cardamone. And of course, it's so hard to pass. So you want to get those passes done on the straightaways, the harder corners, right? The 90-degree angle corners. You don't want to have to try and pass over the mountain like this. That's where you want to try and make up time on cars, that are seconds ahead if you can get clean racetrack. You do not want to be stuck behind somebody slower than you over the mountain through these twists and turns.
As a faster car, sometimes it is absolutely infuriating to get someone on the mountain like this. Though these 2 look just about evenly matched, I think we're in for a good fight coming into the straight.
Want to check in with the weather conditions. Brought to you by Cody Williams Design. There was a threat of rain. You can see the overcast skies here in the sim and the relatively high humidity. There is no longer really a threat of rain, at least in the opening hour of this race. We are pretty dry for the foreseeable future. It might get wet later on. We'll, of course, keep you as abreast of that as possible, but 68.5 degrees in sim, pretty cool, actually, and that tracks. If you took the Bathurst 1000 date, I believe that's just coming out of winter for Australia, because of course they're in the southern hemisphere, so that's just coming out of winter for them. It would be a little bit cooler. It makes sense for us to have a rather cool temperature here today. 77 degree track temp. That's a little high for a 68 degree day, but not too bad. It just helps these guys build the temp in these tires a little bit sooner when they do put cold tires on. Of course, they had cold tires at the start. everybody seemed to do well. I gotta say, I think everybody seems to have practice in this car, considering we didn't really have any major issues off of a standing start with very cold tires in a car that hates cold tires. Checking out deeper in the field, this is for 15th spot. This is a train of 3 cars, if you will. Chris Sherburne, Finley White, and Lionel Callisto. Of these 3, Lionel Callisto is the only one running America's for points, I believe. Sherburne and Finley White both carry triple-digit 600 numbers, and I believe in this case that indicates they are here as kind of special one-off entries, or at the very least not earning points in this round. And kind of the visitors, if you will, considering, well, I say visitors, and I wanted to double check because Finley is, of course, a New Zealander, and Chris Sherburne, well, he's from the United States, but in this case, I suppose this is Finley's home race, but visitor in the sense that the rest of these guys are fighting for points.
And it's wonderful to see people who aren't necessarily fighting for points just coming in and experiencing these honestly wonderful races that the Majors puts on every time.
Jumping up a little bit, this is Junya Hanma, a driver out of Japan. We don't see that very often. Very glad to have Junya here. A bit of a slip up there out of Hell Corner. Junya working on the 10th position, trying to pass Luke Santos. Has fallen back a little bit, of course, with that slip up there out of turn number 1. But this is very cool to see. We don't often see drivers out of Japan in, well, any races that we cover at Pit Stop TV. But it's cool to see more of a worldwide representation, adding in the island nation of Japan here. Not only for us at the channel, but also for majors. Getting more worldwide representation is always a big deal for this type of series. And we could even see Junya here in the top 10 very soon if maybe Junya can maybe pressure Luke Santos into a mistake somewhere.
And hopefully a mistake is all it stays, because all it can take to have a bit of a incident up here on the hill is a mistake.
Still very early here in this Bathurst 500 for the Major Series. We are starting to see a fight now for the first position. At least we're kind of seeing our top 4 split into 2 pairs, with Dowd and Banfield out front, O'Neill and Challoner 3rd and 4th. They have gapped Dan Stevens, Tom Abramitis, and everybody else in this field. And I think Banfield is a little squirrely there under braking into the chase. I took it upon myself to run a couple of AI races earlier today in these supercars here, just to get myself a little more, I guess, prepared for this broadcast and gain a better respect for what these guys would be doing here today. I don't know that I could do 81 laps. I could maybe do 8. So I could maybe do 10%. But I would have to tone it down because, frankly, when I ran those races earlier, I only made it a couple laps before I made a mistake and ended up sideways across the racetrack, or, you know, worse, hard into a barrier somewhere. It is very challenging to navigate this race car around this racetrack and to do it consistently. Like, I feel like I can do it okay for 1 lap, but then my tires get a little too hot, or I take the, you know, a slightly wrong line over a crown in the road, and it goes all wrong. There's so many ways you can mess up here at Bathurst, so many ways you can overstep the bounds of this car. I'm going to be saying it all race long. This is a challenging combo, and I'm going to gain a ton of respect for all of these drivers keeping it on the road today. This is already, just watching international and European, everybody who's doing this round is an absolute madman in their own respect. This is a really crazy combo, especially to sign up for and do 3 times this weekend. We have some drivers doing that, going for the Bathurst 1500. That is absolutely insane.
And I haven't tried this car yet, but I've heard stories about how it handles, and I gotta agree with you. Just massive respect to every single driver on the field today.
Taking a look now at Luke Santos, Junior Hanma, and Kenzie Vanderwerken. I do look for some of these V8 supercar specialists to drive through the field as the race goes on. Maybe they miss the qualifying. Maybe they, don't have quite the short run speed that some of these drivers do. But these V8 specialists, I expect them to move up and through the field as the day goes on, especially as attrition sets in. Once you get into that kind of trance state of just running laps, corner after corner, lap after lap, and just doing the same thing over and over, I expect a lot of these more experienced drivers with this car to slowly move forward and gain spots and show why they are V8 supercar specialists by the end of this race. We're a little over 10% of the way in now, and this is a battle for 6th. Tom Abramidis, Travis Worling, Bretton Foster, and Austin Peterson here under a blanket, 4 cars in total, and they are all Ford Mustangs. One car off, that's Junior Hanma back there. Hanma will fall back to 12th. And is now under fire from Brian Bennett at Sector 5. That's going to stack things up with Finley, or Chris Sherburne rather. Then you see Finley White and Lionel Callisto side by side as well. They head up to turn number 2 here. We've got some good racing in the mid-pack.
Running wide back there just kind of solidifies what I was saying earlier. That first corner, it looks really harmless, but it can be harmful.
Moving back up to that fight for 6th. Worling on the back end of Abramidis. I don't think we've seen Worling in the last round or two. Good to see Travis here today. Let's go on board with driver number 90. We'll keep an eye on that battle for the race lead. It's not really much of anything right now. I do suspect we'll see a fair bit of tire and fuel saving in the opening portion of this race. I think it'll take a little while for these guys to get super racy up front. But in the mid-pack, we're already seeing gloves come off in some cases, and these drivers start to push the issue to move forward. And, we saw the mistake on lap 1, or I guess the incident. I won't say mistake because he barely bobbled and then unfortunately just happened to get tapped around. But the problem anyways for Dalton Fredericks on lap 1 to get turned around there at the start finish line. Dalton is now up to 24th spot, so working through the field, but still has a long ways to go.
I do think this is a good time to bring back up the full course yellows. And just how well it could change the race. You're talking about the trance state that you get in, but I will say, in my own experience, and I'm sure other drivers experience, that yellow coming out, it can take you out of it when you realize, hey, my tires are worn and I'm low on gas, and I actually have to come in. And it could just mess up the momentum just a little bit.
It definitely can. And I very much look forward to hopefully getting at least one full course yellow just to break things up for these drivers, provide them an opportunity to kind of reset a little bit and get back after it, because those breaks, I don't think you realize until you get them. I don't think you realize how much you truly need them. You might be thinking, 40 laps into this race, I think I'm okay to go to the end. You get that break, your arms can relax, and then you realize just how tense you truly were. So I do hope we can get a break or two, as we've got a great fight here with Junior Hanma going back by Kenzie Vanderwerken. Vanderwerken back down to 12th, Hanma up to 11th. They have lost touch, though, with Luke Santos. That's the cost of doing battle. Oh, Lionel Callisto over the bounds a little bit there, heading towards Skyline. I think we can learn a lot just watching these onboards and how these guys approach things, because managing traffic was a big challenge for me when I raced against the AI. Obviously, you can fine-tune the AI to have different difficulties and such, but it was definitely unexpected how much you have to check up sometimes over the mountain and manage just when you get a run. You want to set up certainly for, I'd say, Forest Elbow to get down the hill is certainly a place to set up for, to get a run at somebody and head down Conrad and try to make a pass by the chase. In this case, Lionel Callisto looks around the outside of Murray's corner and no dice. He will fall back in behind, so no pass there. Joseph Cardamone side by side with Sebastian Jackson, and the Kingsman Racing driver will pass the Fusion Racing driver. Cardamone up now to 25th spot. This is a 30-car race, and I do want to mention at the back end of this 30-car race, we have Richard McClure in the 33-car out of the United States for Dog Bear. And McClure, it seems, started from the pit lane, so did kind of start at a deficit. But as this race goes on, I'd imagine at least a couple of drivers will drop out, and McClure can make some spots up.
That's always an interesting strategy to me. Starting from the pit lane, it can work really, really well in the case of a messy turn one, but if it's a clean turn one, you're kind of messed up and you got to rely on your own pace there. You have no one to give you a slipstream down the straight. It's just you, all alone.
I'll watch on board with Ross Banfield and just gain a slightly better respect maybe for what's happening behind the wheel. Here's driver's eye POV. Study this. This is how chaotic it can be. Of course, this is the simpler part, and it's still going to be a little crazy, I think, for Ross. Following in the second spot, you see the check to the steering, trying to hit these apexes through the chase. It's going to be relatively calm in this portion of the lap, but as soon as they get around to turn 2, that's when things start to get crazy again.
You can already see a little bit of correction coming out of the corners. It tells you he's really trying to push this car. He's really trying to catch Dowd, or at least stay close to him.
So we continue to watch here Ross Banfield in the back bumper on lap number 12, putting chase to Nathan Dowd. This is for the race lead. And this is, of course, the chaotic section of racetrack. As I mentioned, once they got around to turn 2, it all picked right back up. It was relatively calm, you know, coming back up the mountain. Then turn 2 gets a little crazy again into the cutting. Through each of the parks. Now this is over Skyline, down towards the Dipper. This is where it's really hairy. Right there, you're trying to align the far side of the race car with the inside wall, and it is so technical to try and do. Especially, again, you know, this is a right-hand drive car. You are seated on the far side away from that inside wall that you're trying to get to. It would be like being in a NASCAR stock car and trying to get as close to the barrels around the final corner at Sonoma, or the hairpin at Sonoma rather. You're on the opposite side of the race car trying to get as close as you can to the inside of the corner. It is a very challenging thing to try and do, but so far, again, everybody doing a very, very good job. You know, you talk about the challenges of this car, this track, even the weather conditions being a little warmer on the track maybe than you might expect for a cool day at 68 degrees in the air, but everybody's handling these challenges very, very well. And I don't know that we're going to have, you know, the craziest kind of chaotic race ever today. I think it's going to be a little bit calm and just an exhibition of how good these drivers in the Major Series truly are. Oh, change for the race lead. Hello. Ross Banfield has just found a way by. Christian Challenger on the same lap is now challenging Austin O'Neill, and Challenger goes by. Same point, same lap. Position changes here for first and third. That is a big deal. Go back and we're trying to check in on that battle again with Junya Hanma and Kenzie Vanderwerk. And here is the replay, though, of Ross Banfield just getting a run. And just pokes on the inside, takes the spot away. We'll get a look back at it for Challenger, but it looks like it's about the same thing.
I gotta say, absolutely fantastic move from the both of them. Just pick up the run coming down the hill there, or down the mini hill there, before going onto the big mountain, and take the inside and run with it.
Oh, and Austin O'Neill even kind of overstepped into kind of the loose stuff there. We talk about it a lot in dirt racing, actually, but we don't see any dirt racing on the calendar this year for the major series. Those might be a foreign term to some watching, but kind of jumping the cushion. That's something, again, that you hear a lot in dirt oval racing. Maybe even in some dirt road racing, I'm not really sure, but it's when you get out of the racing groove a little bit higher up the racetrack into the marbles and stuff, and iRacing does simulate those marbles, at least to a point. It's not perfect, but it does a really good job. And when you do get out of the racing line, not only is there loose stuff up there, but the track is also cooler, so it doesn't have as much grip. And it looked like when O'Neill had to let Challenger go by on the inside, Austin got into some of that loose stuff, some of the marbles, the cooler racetrack, and it seemed like he lost grip. So that was really interesting and worth noting, I think. If you get put out on the outside of turn 2, it may just be worth letting that car go and trying to find another passing opportunity, trying to find another spot to get that spot back away, because I just don't know that it's worth fighting there. Good to see Jimbo Pfeiffer check me in the YouTube chat today. I like seeing Jimbo on the racetrack, but good to see him in the YouTube chat as well, as these drivers work now lap 14 of 81. You don't typically see lap races in road racing, but I kind of like it. You have a predetermined amount of laps to run, distance, and you can, I think, play a better fuel game that way, personally. I think you have a lot of guys end up missing the fuel game sometimes when you run it as a timed race, but it's a little more concrete, and you can take a few more liberties with your fuel strategy, I think, with a lap race versus a timed race. That's just my personal opinion.
That is something that I do like more, is I do like these lap races. And as I said, the fuel, it's a lot easier to calculate fuel running road, and I think that's something that is definitely going to be easier for these drivers throughout this race. These next about 70 laps or so.
So watching your top two here on the racetrack, they're starting to split apart. I think Ross Banfield truly was just a bit faster than Nathan Dowd and had to hold back there in the early goings. Because since passing Nathan, he has really started to take off. Not a terrible amount. I think the draft is helping Nathan a bit, but Ross definitely seems faster, and we can even bring up, give me 2 moments to do it, but we can bring up a lap comparison between these two drivers. This will be, of course, between Ross Banfield and Nathan Dowd. The last lap, you can see 0.2 better for Banfield. So I know that's not a ton, but stack that up over the course of, 60 laps remaining, that can really add up. Brian Bennett slow, potentially out of turn number 1. Losing time now to Finley White, Chris Sherburne, and Junya Hanma. These two side by side up the mountain straight to turn number 2.
Beautiful and textbook pass from Hanma there in the 642. Love to see it, and I think we're going to see a lot more passes at turn 2 there.
Hanma kind of missed the cutting, though. Got out a little wide. Again, into some of that loose stuff. You can see just on the outside of the higher load corners, you can see some of the grit and the marbles and excuse me, and stuff on the outside of the racetrack. That's what I'm talking about. That's the stuff you don't want to get into, and Junya was almost up there. So Junya definitely a little wide at the cutting, got it back under control the rest of the lap so far. Aggressive on the curbs down here through Skyline and the S's into the Dipper. It's just so much fun watching these cars. I know the Bathurst 12-hour is a pretty big event in the opening portion of the calendar year here on iRacing, but this is my first real experience with these supercars, especially here at Bathurst. I think I like these cars more. I definitely love GT3 racing. I'm glad we get to have it relatively often with the North American Racing League, but so far, first broadcast covering these kinds of cars, I am enjoying this a lot. Just watching these guys battle these cars in the racetrack, I think I prefer this to most cars on road now.
You know, so far I'm loving it too. I love myself some GTs, I love myself some formulas, but this is honestly wonderful. And it kind of reminds me to bring up this conversation. And I want to ask you this. Would you take GT cars racing on a bigger circuit or a smaller circuit with some Mazdas, as we see looking on the inside here into turn 2, and we're going to get the pass?
Enzi Vanderwerken, an easy time there passing Luke Santos. That was really well done, but I feel like Santos might have rolled over for Vanderwerken just a little bit. I don't think there was much overlap, but maybe the spotter settings are to be a little conservative for Luke Santos potentially, and maybe that was just closer than Junya had ever gotten. That just seemed like Kenzie made easy work of the 587 there in turn number 2. But again, another example of one car poking to the inside and just kind of starting that overlap, and the car that gets put on the outside kind of relenting, getting out of the way, and getting into that loose stuff. You can see around a lot of these corners now that we're racing, now that we're putting laps on the racetrack and doing it as 30 cars as opposed to, you know, a handful at a time in practice. There is a lot of marbles building up around the outside of the racing groove all over this circuit. But to answer your question from nearly a lap ago now, I definitely prefer Mazda Miata racing. I love Miatas. I really do. I'm not necessarily heavily into Miata and JDM culture, as Dowd rips off the fastest lap of the race in position number 2. But I very much have an appreciation for the MX-5 as a whole. All 4 iterations of it, NA, NB, NC, and now ND with the current MX-5, but I love Miatas. They're so much fun to race. If I had to pick one, by the way, I would actually opt for the NC Miata here on iRacing, the older car. I just think it's a little bit cooler. That's just me.
You know, fair choice, and I'd have to say the same. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with the supercars, and as you were talking the GT3s, it's kind of almost a similar discussion.
I think it is a little bit. I think, you know, the supercars series in real life hits some shorter racetracks. You know, I was pretty surprised to see just how short Winton is when it was added to the sim, and unfortunately we've never been able to broadcast Winton just yet. But Winton is a little bit shorter, I feel like. Sandown is kind of in between. It's not a massive GP circuit like you see Formula One and, you know, then WEC and whatnot go to, but it's still decently sized, I feel like. But those are some racetracks I would love to get to, and if we had a supercar series like this or something, you know, those of course would be go-to tracks for that kind of series. But this car, I feel like, definitely could do well, and of course they do a lot of street racing as well. They were just in Gold Coast, I believe, this past weekend, and I know there were some big hits there, a couple of photographers injured, but yeah, I think this car opens itself up to a lot of different kinds of racing. as far as the kinds of circuits you can go to. And you don't have to live on the big GP circuits that Formula 1 goes to or that WEC goes to. I think you could mix it up, go to some shorter racetracks that maybe you see Mazdas go to. You can obviously go to a place like Bathurst. You can go to a street course. You can go to a lot of really cool places with these cars, I feel like. It's of course, I would say similar to NASCAR in that regard, which might just be why you see drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen making the switch, of course Marcos Ambrose before him, making the switch from supercars over to NASCAR and having some success. I would even argue you could throw Scott McLaughlin into that mix. I know Scott doesn't run NASCAR, but this past summer, Scott ran summer shootout at Charlotte Motor Speedway in Legends cars. It was 10 weeks of oval racing and did relatively well. Didn't get a win like Shane did, but did a good job at acclimating to that style of oval racing. Full contact. Legend car isn't quite a stock car, but it's close. I think the formulas are a lot closer between supercars and stock cars, and we've got a problem. Sherburne, we were just watching Sherburne. Bennett also involved. An incident here out of turn number 1, the first big one of the day. And Sherburne's going, well, he might get the car turned around. Bennett, though, I think Bennett's got some damage. Sherburne, though, is the worst off.
And that's a real big hit. I think he's going to try to bring it back around here, and I guess we'll see how it goes for him.
Let's go back and see what happened to Sherburne. This is out of turn number 1. We'll watch from high above. This is right in behind, oh goodness, Finley White, I believe. And ahead, oh, there's a block from Finley down the front stretch. This is ahead of Brian Bennett. Sherburne on the inside, a little bit of netcode contact, and I don't think Sherburne knew that Brian Bennett got there on the outside.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm sure he was thinking that all he had was the car that was coming ahead of him. His spotter was just a little bit wrong, and he brings it out to the curb, and there's a car there.
So this was the fight for about 13th position. For, a little more context as to where they were on the racetrack. This is Sherburne's onboard. So he's locked it on the inside. I don't think he even realized that Brian Bennett got there on the outside. And he just tracked out on corner exit. Ends up smashed in the outside wall. If we come back to live picture, Sherburne is still going on with no front bumper and I would assume at least some suspension damage. But as we near a quarter way through this race, that is our first notable incident.
Definitely a huge ouch, and I know we have lucky break of the day, but I would title that unlucky from him.
Yeah, I agree. He just kind of got backed up in that battle. Of course, he got to Finley's inside, made that little bit of contact by netcode, and tried falling back a little bit, and Brian just happened to be there. And that's no fault of either driver. Now you see Brian Bennett with no front bumper. Something else happened in that lap. Kind of reconnaissance lap to the pit lane, and there is a fast repair for Brian. I think we'll see the same for Chris Sherburne, certainly.
This is going to throw a bit of a wrench into things like the fuel and tire plan. Because you got the repairs, and it's like, well, should I take the fuel now and outrun people and my tires, or do I just keep running on them? As I think we're going to be seeing fuel from both drivers right here.
I don't recall, actually. I'm going to have to dig up the notes that Lynn Kinchlow left us. I kind of completely forgot to make a mental note of how long these cars can go on fuel. I don't recall. Stand by. Because I wonder if you can maybe cut out a pit stop here if you are one of these two drivers having to pit for repairs at this point in time. I want to say it was around 30. It's not in Lynn's notes. It might have been in the international broadcast by SimSpeed. I believe you can go about 30 laps on fuel, maybe to like 32. I need to study up on this. learning the new car. I think just like some of these drivers might be, this is a first for myself, and I think for you as well, covering a race with the V8 supercar. Still learning a lot about this machine.
And I think that's one of the joys about the service iRacing brings. There's so many cars to learn and try out, and they all behave just a little bit differently, if not a little bit, quite a bit, from each other. So they're all a bit of a challenge to drive and swap around between. And I think that's also something that the majors as well, is they give you such a big variety. So we got the supercars here. We've had GTPs, GT3s, and LMP2s. I mean, just a bit of it all.
You know who might know is somebody out in the YouTube chat recently, Dakota Bly. So Dakota, if you have an idea of exactly how far these cars can go on a tank, I'm going to be looking for that in the international broadcast here from SimSpeed in a second, but obviously that's a little bit of multitasking for me. I do believe, I just want to fact check myself, because I'm pretty certain I saw that it was about 30 laps. I just want to fact check because now I'm doubting myself. I don't know this car well enough to say that confidently, so again, I think it's around that number. I just want to be sure as we take a look at a battle here in the 17th, 18th, and 19th region. This is 3 Fords, Dalton Fredericks, Chris Willard in the middle, and Brian Barnes at the back end. A couple of drivers we have not yet seen in Willard and Barnes, but of course mainstays here in the Major Series. Let's ride on board here with Barnes. Okay, 27 to 28. So I wasn't far off, but I wanted to go back and check the number that was listed on the international broadcast because, frankly, Reese Gardner was the lead commentator of that one, and SimSpeed is Australian. They know their stuff. If there's anybody in the community to go to, I feel like it's Reese and company over at SimSpeed. Have a massive respect for what they do, and they are, of course, the kind of resident Australians in this group, and would know better than most, I feel like, exactly how far these cars can go to a tank of fuel. So again, that's 27 to 28 laps. Just for some quick math on the fly here, Blue, if you take 81 and divide that by 27, we'll say that's 3 exactly, but if you divide that by 28, it gets a little more interesting. So I mean, it's a 3 stint race, if you will. If you can go to 28, it gets a little bit easier. I don't think they're going to eliminate a pit stop right now unless they do a lot of fuel saving. So to wrap that up in a bow, those cars that were damaged and pitted about 3 laps ago, I don't think they're going to cut out a stop unless they do, over the course of the next 60 laps, 10 laps of fuel saving. That's asking a lot on a mountain road.
And not just mountain road, a tricky mountain road.
There's Chris Sherburne. So speaking of, he's now 1 lap removed from his out lap. So he's only been on the racetrack for a couple of laps here since that pit stop. Brian Bennett is somewhere up the road, about 12 seconds ahead. And Sherburne is in the face of going a lap down to our race leaders, Ross Banfield and Nathan Dowd. By the way, I just saw a little bit of sideways racing there from Christian Challoner. We haven't checked in much with Christian just yet. It might be time to do so because I saw him putting that car a little sideways on corner exit, just getting a little free, pushing the issue a little bit. He now makes the 3rd Chevrolet on the podium right now. Look at that, just a little bit of correction. He's challenging this car.
And with about a 4-second gap to Banfield, you kind of got to challenge the car. You got to push it to its absolute limit, as he's also kind of on some traffic just ahead.
Yeah, Sherburne made it easy on the leaders, so Challoner will soon have to pass Chris Sherburne. Might be able to just make it until the downhill down Conrad before he gets to that 646 car, but has a chance, at least, of catching Sherburne while over the mountain. Austin O'Neill behind, has not lost touch with Christian at all. And there's the gap from Christian down to Austin, 3rd to 4th. You see the windshield wiper there from Christian Challoner. I want to stress again, there isn't really an expectation for any weather yet, any precipitation. The humidity hasn't changed much. In fact, we can bring up the graphic again. What this does not show, the only stat it does not show, and maybe we'll edit it after this broadcast or something, but the one stat it does not show in this graphic is precipitation percentage. That's 0. And fog percentage, I guess, as well, 0. So no concern right now. We're not worried about rain at the moment. Maybe late in this race, but it looks dry for the foreseeable future for these drivers, which is probably a good thing, all things considered. Pass here, Wayne Hutchison goes by Nick Kuhn. That is for the 24th spot. So Wayne Hutchison, one of the long-time members here of the Major Series, runs all these races each year pretty much, running in the 24th spot, now trying to catch up to Shane Vickery. That'd be for 23rd. Want to circle back around on the Virginia Hanma story. Driver in 12th place now, chasing down Luke Santos. We saw Junya kind of challenge for this spot earlier, or at least on this driver earlier, but at the time that was for 10th position. Now it would only be for 11th. The driver they let go by was Kenzie van der Werken, I believe out of New Zealand, so a kind of home driver in that regard. Junya, though, a Japanese driver. We don't see many of those on the iRacing sim these days. I know there is very much a tight-knit community of those drivers out of Japan, but we don't see them much here on Pit Stop TV. We don't see them terribly often, at least in the Americas region of the Major Series. So good to have Junya here today, and running well. Again, was threatening for the top 10, just 20 laps ago, and still, I think, is reasonable that we could see Junya challenge the top 10 before this race is up. Of course, these drivers have to think about pit stops very, very soon. They can make it to the end on the same amount of stops if they go to lap 27 in pit, but you want to try to go to 28. So pit stops and fuel very much on these drivers' minds.
Pit stops are definitely going to be a bit of a wrench into the plans here, but that might be just what gets Honma into top 10 territory there.
Absolutely. We see it all the time, particularly in GT3 racing, I think, at least for us. But we see a lot of, fuel load battles, I guess is how you could sum it up. Trying to take as little fuel as possible, but still have enough to go the distance. I think, for the most part, we should see everybody fill up here. But then the question is, can you save a little bit to put less in during your pit stop because you already have more in the car? So we could very much see some drivers have some differing pit times and have some passes in the pit lane that way. Here's a battle, though, for 8th spot. Brenton Foster in the black and yellow number 11. That is Austin Peterson making the pass for 8th in car 77. Really quick and easy textbook battle there. Brenton realized Austin was faster, gave the spot up, and I think, I don't want to say this car forces that, because we see a lot of great highlights from the Supercar series when they go to, really any race course on their schedule, but we see highlights all the time from their series of drivers having gunslinging fights, I feel like. But here on iRacing, I feel like it's a little bit trickier with the cold tires and hot tires and worn tires. I don't know, it just feels like, on the sim at least, it forces you to kind of have respect. When a driver gets to you, they ran you down for a reason. Probably a good idea to let them go and just focus on trying to go faster the rest of the race.
There's something I don't see a lot throughout the racing, is I don't see a lot of defensive moves. I've seen a little bit of side-by-side, but never through the turns. But given this is a hard track to go through turns and go side-by-side with, And with these supercars, that's a challenge. You see Nathan Dowd only about 0.3 back behind Banfield in second place. He's gonna be looking for it, but I don't think he's gonna find it for a bit here. I think he's just gonna sit behind here until the pit stop comes in.
I want to give a big thank you to the Majors Series, of course, and Majors Garage having us here today. As these drivers work up the mountain straight away to turn number 2 to begin their run back over the mountain here. This is lap 25 for our race leaders. We do have 2 cars 1 lap down, those being Chris Sherburne and Richard McClure. And I want to take a moment to also thank our partners with the channel, Whiplash SimCams, ATVO, CC's Business, Cody Williams Design, Lucky Performance, and the North American Racing League. Of course, we haven't seen anything terribly lucky just yet. We've seen an unlucky thing or two. Of course, I would consider that happened to Sherburne and that happened to Fredrickson, both being rather unlucky, but we haven't seen anything terribly lucky today just yet. A lot of racing to go, though. Just about 1/3 of the way in. Nathan Dowd back down the hill. This is the Conrad Straight. Pulling 6th gear. And again, we're about 3 laps out from pit stops. These drivers will try to go to 28 if they can. We may see some lap 27 pit stops. But that's going to be cutting it close the rest of the race. Got to try and get that extra lap if possible. So you also want to start planning, I feel like, your move to the pit lane, because Blue, I know you said you haven't done much racing here, if any. Pit lane here is trouble. It is very, very difficult. In fact, we have a camera specifically for it. Let's see. That's pit exit. This is pit entry. Look at the double chicane. You can't even see the first chicane. It's behind the tire packs over there. But you can see that the second chicane right into the pit entry here. That's what you have to get into to pit. It is very, very tricky. If we get another car coming down past it, we can show it a little bit. We'll see it here from Jenya's on board in a second. Off to the left side of the screen. It is a very tricky, challenging pit entry. There's a gravel trap for it. They honestly maybe even need a wall between the gravel trap and the other side of the racetrack. But it is a very tricky pit lane entry. And to do it under green at speed is going to ask the most of these drivers, especially on worn tires.
Like, I wonder if it's going to be a little bit of a pileup if we see a few people dive in there. You know, just a handful, a few back-to-back, and they run in it, and oop, there's a little tap. I guess we'll be finding out in just about a lap's time, however.
Nathan Dowd still challenging Ross Banfield. Of course, Dowd started the race from the race lead. Led the opening 12 laps. It's been Ross Banfield since now for 13 laps. So very much a Ross Banfield kind of day now that we've gone a little ways into this race. I think either one of these drivers could still win this race, though. Christian Challoner might be a slight stretch. He's now 7 seconds behind these two. Christian, I think, just starting to realize maybe Nathan Dowd is going to be the champion this season.
Now, I'm not gonna lie and say I'm super well in with how well the points work here in the majors, but I gotta ask, what would it take for Challoner to claim the title for this season?
I don't know the specifics. I don't have clinch scenarios, but that's definitely on the to-do list for Suzuka next round of, depending on how things look. What I do know is it's very close, and it's like 5 positions at the top end of the results, or 5 points per position, I believe, at the top end, down to 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't know the exact point scale. I'm sure it's available somewhere. I can look for it. But regardless, it's going to take, to even it up between them after this round, drops are a thing as well. Christian would certainly have to start by passing Nathan, and I believe having to put at least probably 4 or 5 positions between them, and that just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Nathan Dowd is still racing for the race lead right now. Christian is nearly 8 seconds behind these two, and the rest of the field isn't even close. 5th place is 18 seconds back, 6th place is 28 seconds back, 7th place is 32 seconds back. You're starting to see the theme, and of course you can see that on the scoring ticker on the left side of your screen, but that's just an illustration of again, how good these top drivers are in this series, especially in this particular car track combo. They clearly have got it down pat, and they've got a good setup, and they just know this car at this point, clearly, as we will hit the 1/3 mark this time around, and this is kind of where the pit lane is going to open up. We'll start to see hands be thrown, in the proverbial sense anyways. Question is, can you make it to lap 28, or do you have to pit on lap 27? Let's see.
It's gonna be both leaders pitting here.
Straight in for our 2 race leaders, Ross Banfield and Nathan Dowd. You can cut the corners just slightly there coming into the pits. Christian Challoner will follow. Austin O'Neill will follow. Dan Stevens, he's a little further back, but he's going to follow in. Travis Warling, he's even further back. He's still in the chase. There we go. Everybody is coming in and taking service this first opportunity round, lap 27 on to 28. My concern is if these drivers don't go to 28 at least once, they use a little too much fuel, do they potentially run out just before the line? I think they'll be okay, but I don't know. If it was me, I would certainly want the insurance of going just a little bit further at least once. Nathan Dowd waiting on service. Car still looks like it's in the air, waiting on tires. Certainly Banfield's car is still up on jacks, so still waiting on tires, still waiting on fuel. Long pit stop here, 42 seconds, 43 seconds, still counting. 4 cars have stayed out so far, those being Tom Abramidis, Austin Peterson, Brenton Foster, and Luke Santos. Down and away for Ross Banfield, and now for Nathan Dowd. Banfield a 52.5 second stop, Dowd a 52.42, but I think Banfield was faster off the pit lane. Frederick stays out, Challoner 3rd out, 52.1 second stop, just a couple of tenths faster than the 2 counterparts ahead.
And I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate here. I wonder if Frederick's going to be able to help Challoner catch up just a little bit. That little bit of the substream down the back straights there before Frederick's comes in. I wonder if he's going to get close enough to grab that and get just a little bit closer to Dowd.
Time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. A bunch more drivers in the pit lane. Lionel Callisto, one of them. You see Junya Hanma now leaving. Daniel Krim, Finley White, Dale Green, all on the pit lane. And 1 car entering still. That is going to be Joseph Holman way back there. He's got some right front damage in that 122, but otherwise, that purple and black Ford Mustang looks okay for having just gone through a 3rd of the Bathurst 500. Up ahead, here's your race leader, Tom Abramidis, the black and pink Ford Mustang. He will work down to the pit lane here, and I'd imagine we'll bring in Austin Peterson, Brenton Foster, and Luke Santos. I don't imagine they go much further. And Santos will officially come in and pit. Driver out of Brazil.
You know, every single time you say where a driver's from, I just gotta be amazed by the variety. not only in the Majors League, but on iRacing itself. That's something else that's wonderful about sim racing. No matter how you do it, you're going to meet people from all around the world, and I think that's just wonderful.
It definitely is cool to see the international flair here for the Major Series, just how many countries are represented over a given weekend in this series. We get a lot of them. We get a lot of cool representation across the board, as that'll be Joseph Homan blending in behind the leaders, not for position. These two still have an 8-second gap back to Christian Challoner. Challoner still well behind, as now we see Edmundis and Santos and everybody else here in the pit lane. Frederick's also in the pit lane here. So pit stops complete for the first time, or at least close to complete. Still a few drivers wrapping up their stops as Ross Banfield leads down into the dipper here on lap 29, with the pit stop now complete at the front of the field. We expect one more pit stop, and then hopefully everybody can make it to the end. They should be able to. They just ran 27 laps. They have two 27 lap runs coming up pretty much to the end, so they should be good. Of course, as mentioned earlier, there is a safety car possible. Basically, the possibility is either 0 or 1 or 2 or 3, and it's kind of a roll of the dice. We'll find out if we get a safety car at some point soon. I think it was around lap 50 or 60 for the European region, for example. And it's pretty much the iRacing procedure, so it's a little different from past rounds that we've had. It's a little bit different, especially from the Majors 24, as far as how it's being handled. It's kind of being left up to iRacing in that way, as Ross Banfield runs the fastest lap of the race so far, a 2:08.014. Battle here. This is for 12th. Side by side, Honma now on the outside into the chase. Around the outside goes the Japanese driver, deep into the grass though. That just might not work out. That's a big lockup into the gravel trap and out way wide for Junya Honma. That will be a position regained by Luke Santos, but what a great attempt there by Junya to go for it into the chase. Just a little too optimistic, as there's a pit stop here from Nate Provost. He has gone one extra lap, and he is not alone actually. He is joined in this strategy by one Bryce Roberts, who has got some left front damage to his Ford Mustang, and they are both joined, I would say, by Richard McClure, who has not yet taken a pit stop in this race. That said, you see a lane time because he started from the pit lane. That might have been a small strategy key for him to just go a little bit deeper into this race and have shorter runs to the end. I'm not entirely sure, but McClure due into the pit lane here, I would imagine, this lap.
And I gotta say, what a attempt by Honda to get past Santos there. That's something that takes quite a bit of dedication, and almost made it stick, but just running out too wide messed it up for sure.
And here's McClure from Dog Bear Racing into the pit lane this time. Bryce Roberts taking service. He's about wrapped up with his 52 or so second pit stop. I gotta say, that's a surprisingly long time for these cars to take in the pit lane. I didn't really have a gauge as to how long they would take, but 52 seconds, I mean, that's longer than a typical endurance pit stop. But I do suppose it is a lot of fuel to go in and 4 tires to change, so certainly different from what I'm used to with the NASCAR ranks, but definitely gives you an added respect for what these drivers and teams do in the Supercar Series. The battle for the lead has not changed at all in the last, 20 laps or so. These two are still stuck together like glue.
And I've been watching those times quite closely. There was a bit of time just a couple laps ago where it was a second. You see and that just brings in the perspective of how close these two drivers are in terms of pace. Even if there is a second gap, Dowd already has it down to 0.5, just to go 0.7 now. So Banfield's pulling away just a little bit, but still quite close.
Problem for Kenzie Vanderwerken, back to the pit lane for Kenzie. Out of the Netherlands, this is, so by the way, I thought that was New Zealand earlier for some reason. I must be remembering a different driver that we had the graphic up for at some point, but Kenzie from the Netherlands back in for another round of pit stops. This is not ideal for a driver that was in the top 10 to this point. And Vanderwerken now leaving the pit lane. Did take only a 43-second stop, so I do wonder what that was all about for Kenzie. Maybe damage repairs of some sort, or maybe mismanaged the pit stop the first time around. So a little over a third of the way into this race. One thing we've not yet talked about is where this race falls into the Major Series calendar. And for those of you that might be new to the Major Series, I invite you to study this a little bit and maybe get interested in running it next time around in 2026, because this is what you can expect. This was the 2025 Major Series calendar. We go back to Daytona for the 2.4 and the Intimidator in back-to-back rounds in January and February. We had IMSA classes, of course, as you can see, for the Daytona 2.4, kind of a precursor to the Daytona 24 that was run just shortly thereafter. Then we had the Intimidator with NASCAR 1987 Cup cars for round number 2. That was the first oval round of the season. And then we went kind of GT World Challenge racing. And that was actually a round that used Bathurst, I believe, for the international region. That was the first round this season where we had different tracks across the 3 different regions. We ended up going to Road America. It was a lot of fun. Then we had the World 600 with NASCAR Gen 4 Cup cars. And then, of course, month of May means IndyCar racing at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We had the Speedway 500 for round number 5 on May the 4th. We checked in at Le Mans a couple of weeks early ahead of the Majors 24 for the Le Mans 2.4, kind of a precursor to, of course, the Le Mans 24 and the Majors 24 that emulates that event. Then in July, it was back to it with some oval racing for us in the Americas region. International and European went to other courses. I believe international, I forget what track they went to. I think they went to a road course, potentially Sonoma, but I believe European, I could have this backwards, but I think European went oval racing at Twin Ring Motegi. They might have been swapped in that regard. Regardless, we went to Homestead Miami Speedway for round 7. Then it was World Series of Asphalt time at New Smyrna. That was a round where every region was at the same racetrack, but they split cars between the 3 different regions. We had the Super Late model at New Smyrna. Then it was time for Petit Le Mans in September, the Southern 500 in October, and of course now here at Bathurst for the Bathurst 500 Gen 3 Supercars for 500 kilometers here this evening at Mount Panorama Circuit. Next up for these drivers, we head to Suzuka to cap off the season and the championship in Super Formula cars. That is going to be a must-watch event for this Majors Series schedule. And back to the context as to who's where in the standings, the championship, Nathan Dowd, Christian Challoner. They currently run 2nd and 3rd on the racetrack in that order. They are the top 2 in the standings. Robert Nash, I don't believe, is here, at least not in top split. But Austin O'Neill is. Ross Banfield is leading this race. And we see some other players in different spots. Brian Bennett, Brenton Foster, Ronald Callisto, all towards the top half of the field. Chris Willard is here today. I've also seen Sebastian Jackson, Shane Vickery, Wayne Hutchison Bryce Roberts, drivers like that on the racetrack here today. So that's a little bit more context as to what you're watching if you're brand new to the Major Series. In the background, our race leaders have just gone through a little bit more lap traffic, and there is more lap traffic on the way in the form of Nick Kuhn in car number 19. And that's going to hold Banfield up just a little bit. Is this going to be an opportunity maybe for Nathan Dowd? No opportunity here into the chase. Dowd will stay in behind Banfield. So your top two really not moving at all. And again, you know, we talk about the context of the championship, Blue. How much does Nathan really have to push? He's ahead of Christian, and frankly, as far as the championship goes, that's all he has to do.
And, you know, I like to draw real-world parallels to simulator racing, and I think a beautiful one is the current Formula One World Championship. With the situation with McLaren and Red Bull with their form of Max Verstappen, I feel like that's almost what we're kind of seeing here, and I think having that double to watch is quite wonderful.
So not much changing as far as the race lead, not much changing as far as the championship lead either right now here in the Majors Americas region. Staying a little bit stagnant these opening 33 laps of racing, but still a long ways to go. Plenty of time for these drivers to make mistakes and for things to change. This is a battle now for 20th spot. This is actually Nate Provost in the 20th position, being chased by Chris Willard. So Willard was one of those drivers I mentioned towards the top end of the standings. Has been consistent. Firstly, consistently here, but also consistently, you know, top 20 or so in these races. And of course, the field size has varied, but he's always been somewhere worth noting. In this case, trying to make it back into the top 20 in this race and stay somewhat close to the front. Ahead of these drivers, we've got a battle for 12th. This is Brian Bennett being chased down by Finley White. They actually just swapped spots, I believe. I believe Bennett has just made this pass per timing and scoring a few moments ago. So Bennett moving forward into position number 12 and Finley White dropping back into position number 13. And if we look at Brian's race to this point, he started 16th spot, Blue. We talk about it being difficult to pass here at Bathurst, but also in this race car. 4 spots, that's not huge, I suppose, but it's worth noting, and certainly is hard to do. I think that's more than we'll see for most of the field.
I feel like that's where a lot of the separation upon the drivers come up here, especially at a track like Bathurst, or really at another tight road course like this, is your ability to pass. And Bennett's putting up a good show of his ability to pass and his ability to pass on such a tight circuit. You know, I forgot to mention this, but you'll notice as these cars run around, you look at the white line, you look at the wall, you notice just how close to the wall they get. And if I'm not wrong, these cars are quite fragile. Just a little tap there, that could make it a little messy, maybe a little bit of damage.
Yeah, one thing that was talked about in the preparation for this round, kind of just in the community, is how fragile these cars can be, particularly the bodywork. I have noticed these guys have made a little bit of contact around the field, and I haven't seen too many broken suspensions, but even in my own testing, I felt like I could race reasonably hard against the AI, make a little bit of contact, and be okay suspension-wise. But you can definitely ding up the bodies of these race cars rather easily, and that counts for something down these straightaways. I know we talk about the mountain section being daunting and kind of overwhelming each lap, and the straightaways being calm-ish, but problems there for Finley White. The straightaways, though, that's where you're straight line making the most speed, straight out speed, and those are pretty important. You do not want to have to be down on pace as Finley White has come in. This is just a straight run to the pit lane. I thought maybe it would be a tow, Finley perhaps just realizing maybe the fuel math isn't quite working. And it was a 17-second stop, and that was it. One thing I noticed, though, you know, you just mentioned damage. I don't see a damaged left front anymore. Maybe it was suspension damage for Finley. Maybe that's why he just pitted.
It's possibly suspension damage. It isn't any form of protest, but it could also very well be incident limit here. It could have gone the drive-through for the 28 incident limit.
Aha. Well, take a note there. Left front is just dented a little bit. You can just kind of see it in these shots. And you can see the little bit of the left front tire sticking out. And when Finley stops in his box here, you should see, I'm trying to find the right camera angle, you can just kind of see it, that bumper resets. I know it's far away from this shot, but the pit cam happens to be directly next to his pit stall. So hard to see it from that perspective, but regardless, that bumper was reset, so that was a fast repair for Finley White, which makes me wonder if there was more damage than cosmetic to that race car. Oh, Nathan Dowd. That was a little sketchy there over the curbing on the approach to Skyline. Right on board with Nathan here for a moment. This is from the driver's eye POV. It's going to move around a little bit. It's going to pitch a little bit. When these drivers go downhill, you'll see it kind of work downhill as well. When they go uphill, you'll be looking down, straight down at the ground as they start that climb back up the mountain. But this is Nathan Dowd trying to chase Ross Banfield for the race lead. If you refer to the left side of your screen, you'll see the distances from the leader back to all of these drivers. In this case, just 3/10 between Banfield and Dowd. These are your top two, and they have been all race long. They have checked out over Christian Challoner by 10 seconds, Austin O'Neill by 12.5, and Dan Stevens by 24.
You know, something I find absolutely beautiful to watch through these corners is the way that they rock in the wheel here, coming into the corner. Watch him coming into turn one here. I'm sure he'll rock it in just a little bit. Or maybe not, but he corrects it coming out, so close enough.
Now watch here when they head back up to the mountain and things get crazy again. You're kind of looking down at the racetrack a little bit because the camera pitches down. That's right back to mountain driving. Dowd got close there at turn 2, but again, you don't want to have to pass over the mountain if you can prevent it. There are a couple of places you can try and do it, a couple of places you can try and force it, but when you're racing with a lead like this, you know, is it really worth it with most of the race still to go? I don't think so. We just hit, I think, 4/9 of the race complete, if you want to look at it that way. And there's a correction. You can see Dowd stepping out a little bit. So probably not worth it right now to force an issue over any part of the mountain. Just ride in the tire tracks of that lead car for right now. If you want to pass, you got to do it down somewhere on the straightaways of this course, at least for the time being. I wouldn't push it yet over the mountain until much later in this race. Deeper in the field, this is 13th, 14th, 15th. Chris Sherburne, Dale Green, and Lionel Callisto. I would say Sherburne has recovered nicely, Blue, but we know that Sherburne's got a pit a little bit sooner and likely an extra pit stop since he had that incident earlier on as Callisto and Green go side by side. Green losing the spot, Callisto taking it away. That is good for 14th position.
Say, wasn't Sherburne a lap down just a few laps ago?
Yes, and that's what I was going back to. He's got to pit again. Remember, he took that early pit stop and got in that lap down position. Brian Bennett will be in the same kind of situation. Brian is currently in 12th. These two will have to pit off sequence from the rest of the field, and will likely, unless we get a safety car, maybe changes something for these drivers, will likely have to pit one more time versus the rest of the field. So one time in excess, if you will, for Sherburne and Bennett, since they had to pit early in that opening stint. So they will end up cycling back out to be back a lap down or so later on. Battle now for 20th spot. Nate Provost, Chris Willard, and Kenzie Vanderwerk. And of course, we know Kenzie can be a top 10 driver. Question is, can you get back through the field? And, you know, we saw Dalton Fredericks go to the back early. He's only up to 17th. Kenzie Vanderwerk not far behind, as Kenzie's currently in 22nd, but working on 20th spot here.
Gonna be looking for the run out here on this straight. Quite the spot to get the run out, and looked close enough. I can see it happening coming up here through the chase.
Of course, trying to use that slipstream, that draft down the Conrad straightaway. No dice, I think, here in the straight or in the chase this time. I think it's going to be having to wait for a better opportunity. Vanderwerken gets closer there, but no dice there in the chase here on lap number 37 for these drivers. They are close to going a lap down, by the way. They're 1 minute and 58 seconds behind the race leaders in a 2 minute and 8 second lap. They have about 10 seconds on the racetrack before they go one lap down. Vanderwerken might have an opportunity here at turn 1. This is for 22nd, and yes, opportunity taken by Vanderwerken. Willard's still out there, got to leave him space, but Vanderwerken will take that spot away. That is good for 21st, and this has brought Joseph Cardamone into the conversation as Willard is not quite done.
I gotta say, while I come up with the mountain, beautiful racecraft there, leaving just enough space to make sure that your opponent there isn't gonna go off the track, so you guys keep racing, but leaving just enough, you know.
A little wide at the cutting there for Vanderwerken, but I would say Vanderwerken is working on moving forward. No, that one's not going to land?
I'm laughing about it behind the push talk, don't worry.
Fair enough. Well, here's your top two. Once again, I know we've looked at them a lot today, but man, they are still on the edge. I think Nathan is keeping Ross honest and vice versa, right? Nathan wants to go out on top this season, wants to win the championship, wants to stay at the front of the field. But of course, Ross wants to be the upset, wants to get these race wins, and Ross has to beat the best to be the best in this case. I think they're keeping each other honest in this situation right now. They are 12 seconds ahead, though, of Christian Challoner. I suppose they could tone it down a little bit and likely be okay. But no toning back at all yet for these two drivers. They stay racing as Joseph Cardamone makes a pass now on Chris Willard. That's 2 spots in 1 lap for car 32. I mentioned Chris has kept it up front, or at least close to the front, and consistent most of the season. This could be a detour from that. 23rd out of 30 is not ideal in the slightest for Chris, but as we've been saying all race long so far, there's still a lot of race to go. We're nearing halfway, so it is kind of time to get going, but there's still a little bit of time left in order to get those spots ahead, as Vanderwerken now works on Nate Provost. This is for the 20th spot. You can see the leaders in the background.
You know, I think the traffic here is going to be the leader's downfall. I think this is what's going to make it real challenging, especially along the mountain part of this circuit. So what's going to happen is Banfield and Down are going to catch them on the mountain here, and they aren't going to be able to find a way by, and they aren't going to be given a way by until the straight.
Textbook pass there in turn number 2 for Vanderwerken to go by Tenacious Turtles' Nate Provost. Good to see Nate. We have not seen much of Tenacious Turtles this season. I believe, I'm checking my notes, yeah, they're the bottom team in Majors Americas here in 2025. This could change that. They could move up ahead of perhaps Vice Motorsports Esports or even Black Flag eMotorsports. definitely want to avoid being the bottom team if you can.
Now, don't slander the Tenacious Turtles like that, okay?
What's that?
I said, don't slander the Tenacious Turtles like that, man. Come on.
Oh, well, no. I would love to see them be higher at the standings. I think they just missed a lot of races this season. I'm sure real life is real life and has gotten in the way, but it is good to see some representation from that team in this round in the form of Nate here in position 21. The leaders are just behind these guys, though. I mean, literally breathing down their necks. And this could be the greatest challenge yet for these leaders to get through lap traffic as we approach halfway. We're about to complete lap 40 of 81, so literally right on the edge of halfway in this race.
Just a little past halfway, actually, 40.5.
It would be on the next lap, wouldn't it? Because we'd be completing 40 here, and then halfway through this next lap, I think would technically be halfway. Regardless, we're at that point in time where if you have fallen back, if you've been conservative, it might be time to start getting going.
A little driver we were talking about earlier, I just want to bring up because while I'm looking at the standings here, this 642 of Honma officially in the top 10. Surely had a fight to get there, but it's in there now.
Look at that. And Bennett and Sherburne have not yet pitted, but Honma and Santos have passed them nonetheless. And our leaders have just gone by Chris Willard to put Willard one lap down in the 23rd spot. They'll now go working on Joseph Cardamone, who's working on Nate Provost ahead. Cardamone is just trying to stay on the lead lap at this point. He keeps finding a new car to go past. Here's his onboard. He is an Aussie, so this is a home track for him, and he's trying to do well here for his home virtual crowd, if you will. Somewhere around here was exactly halfway in this race, I believe, but regardless, it's time to get going. We have no guarantee of a safety car. We might have one, we might not, as, oh my goodness, Cardamone just went deep in Forrest's elbow. That even messed up Provost. He went deep, I think, to avoid it, and our leaders could have been in a war zone there in the final corner before the Conrad straight. That was scary, as you see Dowd trying to get a slipstream, trying to find any kind of edge he can. This is heads up now between our leaders down into the chase.
Closest we've seen them get for a few laps there.
And Cardamone ended up using that to his advantage, made the pass on Provost, and brings Willard back into the fight. Willard on the inside, he will back out. And our leaders as close as ever, as you mentioned. I know it's still early, but, you know, it might be worth thinking about these two being locks for NARL Driver of the Day when that vote comes up. I expect both of their names to be on it for sure. I think it would be an insult to either of them not to include them.
You know, that's one of the things with the Driver of the Day. It's almost an insult not to include the top two, and maybe even all the way down to the top four, which is occupied with O'Neill and Challoner there, because they all drive absolutely beautifully. I mean, no mistakes. They're all on the lead lap. It's wonderful, honestly, almost memorizing to watch.
Well, allow me to make a case, as we've got pit stops actually from Warling and Abramitis. This is early. I think they're realizing maybe they're short on fuel. Pit stops now from Hutchison and from Homan. And as well from, well, no, same two drivers. So pit stops across the board for a handful of drivers now as our leaders work through the dipper here, watching from the blimp camera from high above. I would say if you look at positions gained, there might be some drivers worth talking about. Hanma, his number is about to go up a little bit. Junya is about to be up 3 spots, I believe, once this updates at the start-finish line for Junya. And, of course, you have the 2 spots there for Peterson. That might go up as well. 4 spots for Brian Bennett. That's going to change, though, when Bennett pits. 7 spots, though, for Dale Green. I mean, that could be worth looking at. You know, we talk about how hard it is to pass and how kind of stuck in the rut you are sometimes with this car. I think that's something we have to look at. Certainly the top 2, they have excelled. It would be insulting not to include them, but maybe, you know, worth looking at those positions gained as we have pit stops now from our leaders. Again, this is early. We would have expected if they were splitting this. There's a car out of fuel, actually. That is McClure. Maybe not out of fuel, maybe just hit the pit limiter early, but if they were to split this up in equal shares, it would have been 27, 54, and 81. But, again, I said it earlier, if you pit at 27, are you going to have enough to make it to the end on just one more stop? And I think we're realizing now these guys did not have enough. Or, no, you know what it is? I just realized, I mentioned this in the GSRC stream, there's a 2-minute warning before safety cars. There it is, safety car, yellow flag.
I was just wondering about the safety cars here and thinking about them. I was wondering if they're going to come out. And there it is.
This is going to absolutely save Brian Bennett and Chris Sherburne's race. I don't think it's going to change, you know, I don't think it's going to give them the win or anything, but it's going to certainly save them in terms of racing against the rest of their competitors. This is pretty big in that regard, and oh man, I realized it right at the last second what was going on. It happened in the GSRC stream of the European split. I realized it then. I didn't realize it this time until it was a little bit too late almost. Race control gives a 2-minute warning before a safety car. Yeah, and Murphy's Law is getting on it now as well. There's probably a delay, but yeah, that 2-minute warning is huge. It allows these drivers to kind of know a safety car is on the way, and well, not kind of know, to absolutely know a safety car is on the way, and get into the pit lane before the pit lane closes. That is huge for the entire field. There are a few drivers, though, that have stayed out under this procedure. Austin Peterson, Brenton Foster, Jinya Hanma, Dale Green, to name a few, have not pitted. So we should, I believe, expect them all to pit during the safety car. Obviously, the idea is you want to pit before it. So I wonder how that's going to work out for those drivers.
I don't foresee it working out well. I think that they're going to catch themselves and find themselves at the back of the pack.
Well, the overcast skies are beginning to burn off a little bit. If we look at the Cody Williams design weather conditions, you can see it's now mostly cloudy. And look at that track temp. Oh my goodness. This could explain a lot of the challenges we're seeing from these drivers. You know, we talked about it being 77 degrees earlier on track and, you know, being relatively cool. As the day has progressed, 94 degrees track temp. And that equates, by the way, out to being 34 Celsius. That's toasty. I mean, it's not the highest I've seen on iRacing by any means. I've seen 130 or so before. But that is still toasty for these cars. And there you go, up to 95. It's also now mostly cloudy skies as opposed to being overcast like we saw at the start of the race earlier. And the winds, by the way, are pretty gusty, in excess of 10 miles per hour.
And I wonder if that's attributed to some of the wall hits we've seen. Just some of the slight ones. It's just getting pushed into the wall by the wind.
Very possible. So as the field works down the Conrad Straight, most of the field, I believe, has now packed up behind the safety car. And we mentioned this earlier, that there was a possibility of anywhere from 0 to 3 in this race. But we didn't exactly allude very well to the procedure. And so it's pretty different from how we've done it for the Majors 24, for example. In this case, as opposed to having a physical safety car out there, we're doing a virtual safety car. Well, I say physical safety car, a manned safety car, I should say. In this case, they have elected, the major series has elected to just use the iRacing caution procedure, throw the actual caution in the sim, and allow iRacing to handle things. But in order to give drivers kind of that warning, like I said, there is a 2-minute warning. That's where we saw the influx of pit stops. Depending on where people were on the racetrack at whatever time, the influx of pit stops within that 2-minute warning to come in before the pits were closed. And Murphy's Law in the YouTube chat kind of explains a little more as to some of the reasoning behind it, but that's the crash course, basically. So this procedure was planned. This should be the 1 to green mark, I believe, and we should, I would think, go back racing next time, but you do see the safety car lights are still on. That would indicate to me, typically, that we are going to stay under caution, but I know that can differ here in the road setting on iRacing. Sometimes the safety car lights do not always extinguish.
You know, while we were looking at the front straight there, I gotta say that flag man, he's kind of throwing his arm out up there. I don't know if you notice how aggressively he's moving it there.
You can kind of see it here. We got a camera on the flag position. And let me... Well, that bug hasn't been fixed. There we go. We can actually move the camera and look at Barney the flag man. And yes, Barney is giving it the most.
He's working it. He's going to get a good arm workout today.
Regardless, towards the front of the field, we are headed back up the mountain. And I think we're going to go back racing this next time around. We might go for 1 extra lap, but the safety car procedure was pretty quick earlier in the international and European splits. So I expect this to be relatively quick for us as well. It shouldn't be a huge time suck or anything. While these drivers work around under caution, I want to mention the upcoming broadcast for us here at Pit Stop TV. You see, it's a lot of oval racing, so you can get your oval racing fancy here for sure with us in the next couple of weeks, as we do have kind of a week in between a couple of our upcoming broadcasts. We will be headed out to, well, up north for a short little vacation between these next 2 BRB Sundance Pro Series races, so you can see a little bit of time in between. The only race we're missing really is the next Sim Auto Racing Association Pierce Fleet Service Super Series race. They are headed to one more mystery round later this week. We won't be broadcasting that, but you can keep in touch with that series on social media and also at the website at racesara.com. That's racesara.com. But in the meantime, we've got Richmond Raceway coming up this Tuesday for the BRB Sundance Pro Series. Some short track racing there. Then you do see oval cars at a street course. It's a little bit different. We're taking the Arger car to Long Beach Street Course on Tuesday, November 4th. That'll be the first road course for the BRB Sundance Pro Series in their 5th season of racing. I know Dakota Bly is still watching. Hopefully he's excited for that. It's going to be a very unique race for that bunch. I know some drivers looking forward to it. Some drivers are absolutely loathing the idea. I am one that is looking forward to that very interesting combo. And then you see the next broadcast that we have for the Sarah Pierce Fleet Service Super Series is at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park on November the 6th. You can catch all these races and more on our social media channels all across the internet. The next race for the major series after today comes up on November the 16th. That's the Japanese Grand Prix. Super Formula cars at Suzuka Circuits. That's the next time these guys are in action after today. And of course, it'll be the same kind of get-up that we had this week, where we have international kind of the night prior, of course, on SimSpeed, European, the morning of our race at least on GSRC, and of course the Americas region here on Pit Stop TV, if you want to check in with everything that the major series has to offer. We'll go around for one more caution lap, it looks like. So I suppose we could have trusted the iRacing.com safety car, at least for this pass lap. And there we go,
Yeah,
lights have been shut off.
There we go. Before we even, since you're bringing up the majors next round, I just want to say if anyone wants to participate in it, go over to the website. So if you want to help out and steward some of these races, come in and help us out. We're always looking for it.
I will drop that link in the YouTube chat because I see a couple of drivers that we have in the BRB Sundance Pro Series that I would love to see go run majors. I know it's a big jump to go into Super Formula at Suzuka, but it'd be cool to have you guys in some of these majors events coming up soon. Just drop that link in YouTube chat. It's just majorseries.com, majorsseries.com, but definitely a series we're paying attention to. It's been around for a long time and is one of the, I would say, larger series on iRacing as a whole. And certainly the Majors 24 event is kind of the marquee weekend for the Major Series, and that's a pretty big deal across the sim for sure. So as we get ready to go back green flag racing, in the scope of this race, right, this comes up at 5/9 of the way through, and if we look at the weather conditions, the track temp has not really cooled down. In fact, we're getting more and more direct sunlight as this race goes on, Blue. These are going to be cool tires, mostly, throughout the field. Hot racetrack, right back to it. This could be a chaotic restart.
You'll smell some rubber, that's for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some people running wide, some 3 wides. It's going to be a little messy, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully we don't see any tire smoke.
The big hopefully, I would say, is hopefully we don't have a stack up and a pile up over the mountain, because that is certainly possible. Well, if you're enjoying this broadcast so far, we invite you to, of course, drop a like wherever you're watching, Facebook or YouTube, or I suppose follow over on Twitch if you so feel like doing so, as we watch from some of the fan cams, some of the fan perspectives around this fantastic racing venue. I gotta say, it's been a long time here on the channel since we've had Bathurst for a broadcast, but it is so cool to be back here, virtually at least, and to have a broadcast here at this racetrack this evening. It's been a while, but I got a whole new respect for the track again when I was building cameras for this place. Man, such a cool venue. It really deserves so much respect in the scope of racing worldwide, and certainly is a cool place for us to be broadcasting from virtually here at this evening. Reminder as to kind of who's who in the battle up front. When we go back green, we're going to have Ross Banfield out front, Nathan Dowd in second, Austin Peterson third. Once again, the sevens towards the front of the field, but then Christian Challoner and Brenton Foster, the battle of the ones. Challoner will restart from fourth and Foster from third. The trouble is, there is a lapped car, it seems, in there, I think, in the form of Joseph Cardamone. Yes, he is right here, actually. He is fourth in line, or no, third in line. Provost is right behind him, fourth in line. Bryce Roberts is mixed in, so that they have done no sorting, so that the lapped cars are still mixed in. It's interesting. It's a single file restart with lapped cars still in their positions. So this is going to be difficult on these guys. I mean, it's a 1 second gap back to Christian Challoner, who's only fourth. So it is going to be challenging on those drivers that are in that kind of third, fourth, fifth, sixth range to get up there and fight with the race leaders, but obviously gives a slight advantage to Banfield and Dowd. Here we go. To the front straightaway to get this race restarted. One car pits, but down the front straightaway here at Bathurst, we are back green flag racing in the Bathurst 500.
Clean looking turn one from the front of the field here. You can see him a bit tighter in the back. And it looks mostly a single file coming through. You see a little bit of side-by-side back there, though.
Christian Challoner makes a move on Austin Peterson. He's going to have the third spot up the hill to turn number 2. Looks to the inside of Provost, and Challoner will take that spot away. Peterson follows through. That, I think, is very important for the context of the rest of this race. Challoner is that much closer for this restart now to get back into the swing of things. Gets by a lap car or two there pretty quickly. Still has a lot of work to be done. He's 1.5 seconds behind those top two. You can see your scoring ticker is back up on the left side of your screen, but your top 10 verbally at least are Banfield, Dowd, Challoner for the top 3, then Peterson and Foster for the top 5, O'Neill, Hanma, Stevens, Warling, and Abramitis for your top 10. It was a mix pretty much through your top 10 of who pitted and who did not. Old tires belong to Peterson, to Foster, to Hanma, and to a couple of drivers outside of the top 10, those being Green, White, and Vanderwerken. As here goes Challoner on the driver's left side of Joseph Cardamone. He's going to bring Austin Peterson along with in that black Ford Mustang. Peterson making the dive there. I say a dive. Not really, but he does get past that lap car of Joseph Cardamone before the chase, and that is rather important for Peterson. Of course, Austin's going to try and challenge Christian Challoner for third spot, but Challoner's got to be thinking about the championship right now. He knows the work is cut out for him. He has got to get up to Nathan Dowd somehow, some way. They're on an even footing as far as tires go, Blue, but I just haven't seen the kind of pace out of Christian that he needs.
Not yet, but as you were talking about earlier when you were talking about when the halfway point came up, now is the time to start pushing, especially now that we're out of the safety car, everyone has fresh tires, everyone has full fuel. And you get pushing now, you should be good for the rest of the race. And I think this might be what Challoner was waiting on.
Riding on board with Christian Challoner, you see your top 2 ahead. They're nose to tail. Christian trying to gain. You see he makes the lunge there through the cutting. Gained a little bit of time, but loses it on exit. My fear for Christian is that he's going to have to be at 110% the rest of the race to keep up with their 90 or 95% in the top 2. And I could be wrong, but it has seemed like the top 2 can maybe go a little faster if they wanted to, and it seems like Christian is on the wheel right now going as fast as he possibly can to keep up with them. I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like. That's what the eye test tells me.
You can kind of tell by looking at the wheel here. You see him really throwing it in and around the corners. He's really trying to push the car to his fullest extent.
He got really free there out of Forrest's elbow. And again, that's indicative of a driver pushing as hard as he can, trying to get everything out of the race car, especially knowing what it means for his championship. You see that number 1, I do believe, feel free to fact check me out there on YouTube, but I do believe he's the reigning champion in the Americas region, and that would be why he bears that number 1. Regardless, as far as this season goes, just in the scope of 2025, you know he wants this championship. And he is starting to close here, Nathan Dowd. Have roles reversed. Is Dowd now being held up by Banfield?
We'll find out how held up he is coming down into turn 2 here.
Meanwhile, this is a fight for 5th. Austin O'Neill has just gone by Brenton Foster. In fact, it happened after the start-finish line, so Foster's gap graphic here is still tracking to Peterson. Foster looks to the left side here. No move into turn number 2. They will stay in their positions here in 5th and 6th. There were some battles deeper, but your top 3, yes, 3, are now very close under a blanket as they work through the cutting here on lap 48.
See Challoner there cutting it just barely with 1 second to Banfield. He's under a second to Dowd now. He's getting closer. I think the pushing is working for him. I think he played his cards right, and if he continues to play them right, he may just pull ahead of Dowd.
And one thing to consider, right, is before the safety car, there's the possibility that we don't get one, and that you have to run these tires all the way out each stint, right? All 27 laps. Now, since they've pitted out of the safety car, if Christian was saving before to make sure he had tire life all stint long, he can now push a little more these stints and split the difference. Since we went back green at what, 45? Or I guess the completion of 45, so that means we had, doing quick math, what, 36 to the end, right? So he can split it into 18 and 18 and push a lot harder for each of those 18 lap stints. Just a theory, a possibility, if you will.
And, you know, cutting out 10 laps from a stint, that's also going to mean he's going to be lighter on fuel, as should the rest of them if they set their settings right in the black box. But that brings up just another spot for these drivers to make a mistake on a already technical track and a already technical car, and it's all starting to pile on coming up to the end-ish area here.
Definitely, things are starting to take shape here in this race. Challenger a little closer to Dowd than he has been for a while, if not all race long. Dowd 4/10 back up the straightaway behind Banfield, gets a little closer through turn number 2. Challenger was at one point only 6/10 back of Dowd, now closer to 7 as they work through the cutting here on lap 49. My question, though, is how long can Christian keep this up? You know, if we go back to his driver's eye POV, he is working this car right now. And we're already 2 hours and 10 minutes into the broadcast. I would call it, oh boy, probably an hour and 30-ish minutes into the race. Hour and 30... 35 even? Problems for Sebastian Jackson, potentially. It's a tow back to the pit lane for Sebastian. Let's go check in on what's happened to driver 87 here as our leaders get close in the Forest Elbow. Let's go back and check. This happened seconds ago. Sebastian Jackson here. This is turn 1. Had to have happened soon after this. Perhaps in turn number 2 for the Canadian. Looked okay through turn 2, but that's not ideal. That's a teammate even. I believe it was Bryce Roberts that made contact with him, and Sebastian Jackson has significant damage after the fact and cleans out. Who is that? Is that Brian Bennett? Or was that Lionel Callisto? That was Callisto. Oh my goodness.
That looks real nasty there.
Well, Sebastian Jackson... Well, let's see. There was an incident up ahead of Bryce Roberts. He was on the outside into turn number 2, got up in the loose stuff, got loose. They make contact. Those are teammates, and then Roberts comes over in front of, I think that was Nick Kuhn. And then Sebastian's just along for the ride here. Maybe not. That might be a little more driver error than I thought.
Looks almost like a bit of a lockup. I don't know if there was smoke back there. I didn't see it, but I think that's just what happened there. He came into the turn a bit too hot, a bit too far on the inside, couldn't slow down, locks the brakes up out of a little bit of a pressure, and well, there's a result.
So that is what happened to Bryce Roberts. You saw the other car, that was Daniel Krim, going by Bryce Roberts. Roberts got out in the loose stuff, but then Roberts' teammate Sebastian Jackson, again, I don't think there was lockup. I think he truly just kind of lost track of where he was there. I think that is just driver error. I want to get one more look. There aren't the lockup lights that you see in GT cars in the onboard. That would help us a ton if there were lockup lights like in a GT or LMP2 car, but I think he just messes up. I think that's all it is. I don't think there was lockup. I mean, he just cleaned Lionel out. And now to the pit lane for Joseph Cardamone. He's in taking service. This does not look scheduled. Look at that right side.
Quite the bashed up right side of the track. And I will say, the closer side of the track is on the right side throughout a lot of it.
Oh dear. This happens to be an incident in the chase, it looks like, for Joseph Cardamone. That is a ton of damage.
I think there was a bit more than just right side damage there.
Yeah, I suppose so. This is going to be a full replay now. For Cardamone, Australian native, was already a lap down though, has had a rough day. You know, just because you're Australian doesn't mean you excel necessarily in supercars, and he might still be learning, I don't know, but Joseph just got crossed up. I did that myself, so I don't have much room to talk. I did that in testing for this event. That's easy to do, actually, right there. And he's just along for the ride now. No right front, really no steering. You can see the steering wheel is static here because the sim cuts off data once the wheels are disconnected, basically, and it stops transmitting steering wheel data. So it stops moving physically there for us, but incredible, and along for the ride. There goes the bumper. This is down into the chase. This is a scary, scary place to be moving that quickly with little to no steering. The Roberts got held up. There was more contact. Look at that. You saw Sherburne make it into the back end of another car, and Sherburne, I think, lost his front bumper in that.
You know, this brings up something that the stewards were talking about, and I saw some talk among the rest of the stewards and some of the rules, is pitting if you crash on the mountain, right? You are supposed to not drive all the way back if you're turned. He wasn't turned, but he had quite a hefty amount of damage there impacting him. I'm sure it was more than just suspension. It looked like there was maybe a little bit of engine. See him here again.
Yeah, I think it would have been wise to use the little bit of runoff there is on the Conrad Straight, pull off, get it against the wall. Like here, for example, just put the brakes in and take the toe, maybe.
Yeah, no, this is a bit of a toe spot, but I do understand wanting to bring it back yourself.
This is Sherburne's point of view, and he's going to end up in the back of that car ahead. I'm not entirely sure who that is. It's one of the cars we haven't seen much of. Shane Vickery, maybe, I'm not really sure, but this is down the hill into the chase. You see the stack up ahead, and yeah, that was Vickery he got in the back of. Just had no time to react. They all stacked up really, really quickly, and that is Sherburne's nose gone. More damage. Actually, it came back, I guess, but for the moment, you saw it from the other TV perspective. There was no front bumper on that Sherburne machine. Now, this has left your top three to narrow up. You see Christian Challoner is on the back bumper now of Nathan Dowd. This is for more than just today's win. Again, Challoner needs to start outscoring Dowd. He needs to be ahead of that 7 car. But even if he is today, it's not a guarantee that he makes up points because of drop rounds and everything. So Challoner really needs Dowd to have a problem. I know in racing, drivers always, they want to beat somebody just straight up on speed. But that's not always how it works. I think at this point, Christian needs to realize, I'm sure he has, but I'm sure Christian is realizing Dowd is going to have to mess up. He's going to have to slip up, or somebody's going to have to get into him or something, impact his day, if he wants to truly outscore the driver of the number 7 the rest of the way in this season, these last 2 rounds, because Nathan is just too well-rounded, I feel like, to not be in this kind of position, to not be up front, and to simply be outscored by Christian Challoner. They're both great drivers in their own respects. Nathan has just been fantastic here in 2025. So this battle has a lot more context than just today and this race win. The 7 and the 1 are battling for the championship.
See, Dowd looking just a little bit at the inside of Banfield. Maybe was thinking about a late dive there, and I think he's decided against it, which I'm sure a lot of drivers have done so far at this track.
Dowd might be squaring up for a run now. He's within 2/10. Might be an opportunity here at turn 2. Do you wait? I think it's a little bit too early. Now, when they come back around in a lap or two, the pit window is going to open. From 54 to the end, or really 55 to the end, the pit window opens up for these drivers. If you're Dowd, could it be worth pitting, getting new tires, running some fast laps? Because these guys are a little bit slower right now than their fastest laps. You can tell that the tires have taken some wear. Do you want to take the undercut and try to get that spot away.
You know, something I hear a lot is that the undercut doesn't work, but I think in this situation, I could almost see it working, assuming they don't all have the same idea. I think getting that undercut, getting that pace in, it could pull out well here for either of these drivers.
Well, if you're just joining us, this is the Major Series 2025 America's region in the Bathurst 500. This is Gen 3 Supercars at Mount Panorama Circuit, otherwise known as Bathurst. This is round 11 of 12. A lot going on here for the championship fight. 22 points separate drivers 7 and 1. Those are Nathan Dowd and Christian Challoner. They run second and third right now. There's a problem for Finley White. This is down out of the dipper. We'll take a look back at the incident, but if you're just joining us, I want to welcome resident peanut butter enthusiast Kyle Turzak to the YouTube chat. And we are just about 1/3 of the way from the end of this race, about 2/3 in. This is the incident, though, for Finley White. You can hear him high on the revs. He downshifted early there to try and slow the car down through Skyline, and then just everything was going wrong all the way from... I think that was McPhillamy, there we go, where he started to get a little bit squirrely, and it just was all wrong from there down.
Just that one little squirrely bit, and it just threw off the rhythm on such an important track to have a rhythm on. And, yeah, you see what happened there? Hits the wall, goes around, and takes the toe, as he should.
And if you're wondering what it takes to be a peanut butter enthusiast, I suggest you ask Kyle Turzak, otherwise known as Turzak Racing, in the YouTube chat. He can tell you all about it. But this is Finley White. And this is going all the way back to the beginning of the mountain section, really, for Finley, to show you where it all starts to go wrong. Right here, he just ends up wide at the curbing, and this can shake, rattle, and roll a driver quickly. Just one little mistake, especially in this section of racetrack, can really get you messed up. If you're not careful, it can break your concentration. I think that's what it did here to Finley, because everything else from there on down just was not right. Down the hill now, down the mountain. For your top three, this is lap 54 of 81. This is where the pit window can theoretically open up. Oh,
Quick bets, what do we
Dowd.
think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to see any of them dive in?
Dowd was in the mirror there. I think Nathan at least should consider, and Christian too, for that matter. I think they both should consider the undercut. Whether or not you want to take it, that's another story. Considering and committing are certainly very different stories and very different things for these drivers, but I think it's worth giving some thought, especially once we clear the beginning of the pit window, and now here on lap 55, this is where it really opens up. You know, 28 can be a stretch, 27, that's doable. So if you can get to lap 55 here, which they've done, this is where, you know, from here, every lap, I think there's a better stock in pitting, I suppose, because you'll have fresher tires from here every lap, you know, later that you pit to the end. At the same time, if you are Ross Banfield, or rather Nathan Dowd or Christian Challoner, if you are one of these two following, the sooner you pit, the more laps you can run with those fresh tires at approximately, you know, 1 second faster than what's being run, because these guys are down in the 209s now. You see for Banfield and Dowd, 209.3, they can run 208.0s, so they could easily put seconds on their competitor if they were to pit now. Problem for Dowd in that case would be, you know, as soon as he comes in, I think Banfield would likely react, and same if Challoner was the first one down. I think whoever pits, you probably only get one lap on them.
And while we're talking about pit stops here, I want to bring something you were talking about earlier. the 642 of Hanma. We were talking just a bit ago about how they seem to have pit early, but is still running here.
Well, and that's a good point, actually. Hanma is due in, I would say, this lap or the next, along with Peterson and Foster. And I think the game plan for them was track position, because it is so hard to pass. Hanma is here ahead of a driver that has better tires in Dan Stevens, who's 3 seconds back. So this, I think, has paid off for Junya Hanma and for Brenton Foster and for Austin Peterson to get track position by staying out at the safety car, knowing that it's a one-stop for everybody. So that was really good timing from race control and whatever formula was used to determine the lap count at which the caution would come out, and really good thinking, I think, from those drivers that did stay out, that needed that track position to go ahead, stay on the racetrack, keep those tires on, and understand there's still one stop ahead for everybody. That was definitely heads up by them. Of course, you still have to take a full tank of fuel if you did stay out, but you know, that's neither here nor there at that point. Here is Kenzie van der Werken into the pit lane, rather. Dale Green also into the pit lane. And again, pit window opens up. These drivers ran 25 and 28 laps apiece. They did not pit at that caution, so they were due in, truly, at this point in time.
You know what I would call not pitting at the pit window and getting, well, 3 positions out of it?
What's that? Or who's that?
I'd call that quite lucky of a call from Hanma.
Oh,
The skill and brain powers that takes, that is quite lucky.
Sorry, I was distracted by Turzak in the YouTube chat. Yes, those were positions 6 and 7. Indeed. But we're now watching positions 1, 2, and 3, and this is where the meat and potatoes of this race really are right now. I know there's 30 drivers in this race, 28 still running, but look at this. Nose to tail, your top 3. Pit stops could happen at any time between these 3 drivers. Does anybody take the undercut? It's going to be more and more enticing as these laps wear on. None of these 3 pit yet. So if I had to guess, they're probably going to cut it, straight in half and pit around lap 63, which means we're about 7 laps out, 6 laps out. There again, 6 or 7 laps out, Kyle. Yes. Regardless, they could take the undercut at that point in time. They could pit in 5 laps instead of 6.
But you forgot the number 7.
Yes, Blue, I sure did. We'll leave it there. Obviously, if you know, you know. But lap 57 here of 81. So the basically how it was described in the announcements. I see this conversation now popping up in YouTube chat. We'll keep watching the top 3 here. Basically, there were predetermined laps that were known, I believe, and this is my understanding, so it could be a little bit wrong, but predetermined laps that were kept secret to race control only, and predetermined number of cautions even, 0, 1, 2, or 3. As this is in front of the leaders, hello, Joseph Cardamone, I believe that was Joseph. He bins it there into the dipper. That's worth a replay. That was scary for the leaders, but basically, again, predetermined number, kept to race control, and it surprises the drivers in this case. Boy, I can't get over this incident, though, for Joseph Cardamone. That was right in front of the race leaders, down into the dipper. Here you go, from the fan cam. Oh.
You can see him getting a little loose coming down into it. Yeah, no, that was scary. That was a quick toe as well.
That was heads up from him. I know, we were just talking about do you tow or do you not if you crash in the middle portion of this lap. That was heads up on the toe for Joseph. Just got crossed up a little bit loose there into the braking zone and boom, right in the wall. So very heads up to hit that tow button very quickly and get out of the way of the leaders. The leaders, by the way, have just left turn 1 on lap 58. None have pitted yet. There's a little pit stop here, actually, from Brenton Foster, who was up in 6th. And Austin Peterson is also in. He was in 4th. So Train and McTrain Face doing some explanation there in the chat. We appreciate that. Trying to make sense of it all and help out the newer viewers. And if you are new to the Major Series, again, we recommend getting involved in the Major Series in 2026. There's some great buzz around the Majors Endurance Championship, or MEC, that is coming back for 2026. It'll be following a very IMSA-style calendar. Basically, any typical IMSA tracks that you can think of will be on that schedule. So those are endurance rounds, team racing that you can run in the Major Series, technically, as kind of an extension thereof in the Majors Endurance Championship. The schedule for 2026, though, for the Major Series yet to be announced. I believe that will come out sometime around the holidays, just as it did last year.
Oh, the tracks for them? See, I actually may be able to find those if you would wish.
The schedule for next year?
Majors Championship or MEC? Hold on, sorry.
Well, I know I've got a graphic buried somewhere for MEC, but we could probably dig that back up if we wanted to. I suppose you can go through it verbally as well, but the Major Series tracks, I believe, are not determined yet. Tracks and cars, but basically, it's a different car, different track each week, or each round, hitting a bunch of the highlights of worldwide motorsport, as we've got here with the Bathurst 500, of course, mirroring a little bit of what we see in the Bathurst 1000 half distance, as opposed to the Southern 500 that was full distance of a NASCAR race. But you can see, of course, why they might run a half distance here and single driver as opposed to full distance and multi-driver, as this is a single driver championship. But you do still get a good bit of that endurance race flavor here in this one. This is still a long race for these guys, 3 hours or so of racing, just as we saw 4 hours of racing or so in the Southern 500 last time out. The top 3 inseparable to this point on lap 59 of 81. A little step out there over the curbing for Banfield. We've seen a lot of these 3 though, so we'll keep an eye on timing and scoring, but we want to leave them for now. Let's look at 21st and 22nd. This is Sebastian Jackson and Chris Sherburne. Jackson, of course, was involved in that incident between turns 2 and the cutting some time ago. Jackson's still without a front bumper, though, and Sherburne still has that front end damage. So these are guys now that have kind of been run through the ringer, have some damage, and are just trying to hang on and get what they can in the standings. Roberts and Vickery are here in 23rd and 24th. They are also battling, and Roberts is defending a little bit. Vickery looks to the inside.
Spicy in turn 1, nothing so far.
Yeah, pretty split apart now between these two. But if we jump back up to Sherburne, he's a little bit closer to Jackson. This is into the cutting, and I would imagine Sherburne should have some opportunities. I know I've preached all broadcasts so far. You don't want to pass during the mountain section, but maybe you do if you're Chris Sherburne here, because you know Jackson is at a downforce disadvantage. He's got no front bumper. At least you might know. He might not know, actually, that Jackson doesn't have a front bumper. Regardless, you might have an opportunity here to pass if you're Sherburne. Do you force the issue? I don't know if it's worth it, as problems for Shane Vickery. He has just towed to the pit lane behind these two. Let's see what happened to Shane. Was running in the 24th spot, chasing down Bryce Roberts. This seems to be an issue maybe into the cutting, or maybe a little bit further in the lap as Dan Stevens will pit. And yes, exit of the cutting there. Poor Shane Vickery got loose on power and just called it a day. Top 3 again. Dan Stevens has just pit, so that is a domino to fall, I would say. He's one to watch. Hasn't really been up front in this race, despite being a little more competitive, I would say, in the European round that I watched earlier on Global Sim Racing Channel, but that's still a pretty quality driver in these cars and at this racetrack that, again, is worth paying attention to. If he's pitting, it might be time to consider hitting the pit lane, and I mentioned earlier as well, these guys might try and split the distance evenly between the last, or the restart we had, and the end of the race. That would be around lap 63. So I would say as we get closer and closer to that point, the likelihood of any of these three pitting is just going up and up. Honestly, Blue, if I'm Christian Challoner, I think I would just go ahead and pit.
You can see him starting to fall back a little bit compared to how close he was to Dad a bit ago. I gotta agree. Just go ahead and send it in there and full push for a few laps.
Well, I guess this is where some of the unknowns for me come into play with this car. I actually don't know how long the tires would take for a pit stop. Maybe that's why they haven't pit yet. I don't know. Like, would there still be the benefit of taking 4 tires? It's a good question.
You know, I would think as much left turning as there is at this track, you might only need to take your right side tires.
Oh, that could be a treacherous idea. I don't know.
That.
Challoner, though, approaching down. This is as close as they've been all race. You see Challoner wait. That was the beginnings of maybe a pass opportunity for this number 1 car at some point to try and outscore the number 7 once the checkered flag flies.
And you know he's watching the laps tick down, and he's thinking, I gotta make a move somewhere. I gotta keep within contention, within reasonable contention for this championship. Go back to back this year.
Well, so here's where we can gain some answers. Here's Dalton Fredericks into the pit lane. Let's see what he does. Does he take tires? He's up on jacks. And of course, we can't find out exactly how many tires in live time like this. Daniel Krim also into the pit lane. But he's up on jacks taking tires. Now, Dan Stevens only took 23.4 seconds. So if Fredericks takes longer, down the way with tires. I recall earlier in the pit stop we had under green in the first stint, the leaders were on jacks the entire stop almost. So my question to the viewers might be here, is the car on jacks the entire pit stop or just for tires? Because, traditionally for a GT car, for example, once the jacks drop and the car hits the ground, that's a sign that we know tires are done, they're just waiting on fuel. Is that the case here with the supercars, or does the supercar stay in the air the entirety of the pit stop, even until fueling's done, even after tires are done? Because I would think tires can be done relatively quickly. So, really what I'm wondering here is can they get away with taking 4 tires but less fuel, or will they be held up waiting on 4 tires? I can't imagine you want to go 40 laps nearly on one set, but there we go. So that's the answer. That's what I was starting to figure. The car is in the air for fueling as well. So it's different from GT cars and kind of what we would usually expect, Blue, and that makes it even harder to guess what these guys are doing, because at least we know when the jacks drop, we know tire changes are done with a GT3 car, for example. That's not the case here. It's a big unknown to us. Only so much data is transmitted through iRacing. We just have to kind of guess.
It does get me curious, though, is how long do tires specifically take? Because we were seeing, I believe, on that first pit stop, about 50-second times in the box, unless I was looking at the wrong counter. So, how long do they necessarily take?
We're getting some really good information, actually. Personally, I'm brand new to supercars. This is my first real experience with them at length. I've run some laps at racetracks before. Brian Bennett, by the way, is in the pit lane. So he is the latest of the top 10 or so drivers to come in down the pits. But, Dakota Bly mentioning there was actually a penalty in the Gold Coast race for supercars yesterday, where a car was fueled while being on the ground. Apparently that is a penalty in supercars. That's why you see the cars stay up during fueling. And I know a lot of road series in particular are very, very particular about safety standards while fueling is occurring. I know that from amateur sports car racing, as Challoner will go ahead and take the one-lap undercut here. He will pit just one lap prior to the number I gave out earlier, 63. Challoner comes in, he's going to put tires on, and he'll be able to go, I would say, a second and a half faster. At least sooner. Of course, you got to realize they'll be on cold tires. It'll take a second for those tires to come into temperature, but once he gets a lap or two on them, he should be able to lap faster sooner than these guys, and might be able to use that to jump ahead of them. Might. We'll see.
I want to bring something up since we have just a bit under 20 laps. We could have another caution. Any lap here. We could see another caution come out, and that could completely throw off this entire pit strategy Challoner has here.
I think Challoner might have waited too long, in my personal opinion, but I'm not behind the wheel of the race car, and I'm not on the pit box engineering his race. My opinion there is based solely on a hypothetical, a theoretical, that he could have undercut earlier, as Dowd got all kinds of out of whack there over the crest. But it's a big hypothetical and theoretical that he could have pitted earlier and run faster laps, but he also would have had worse tires then to defend, even if they waited longer and he successfully ran faster laps. And once he undercuts, like he just did, I'm sure these two respond. I'm sure they both pit this lap. It's easy to be optimistic about the possibility of undercutting, pitting early, trying to get an advantage like that, but oftentimes it isn't quite as beneficial as we want it to be in the broadcast. We want it to make that big difference and spice up the race. Although look at this, they keep going. Well,
this is getting interesting. It makes me almost wonder if Challoner potentially messed up his fuel strategy earlier in the race.
I don't think so. I mean, there's no way they go 18 more laps on a tank. That just simply isn't in the realm of being possible, I don't think. I do find it interesting they didn't respond to Challoner right away and pit. Maybe they're trying to find a certain delta with traffic, I'm not sure, but Challoner is out of the box, and this is his outlap wrapping up now. He is just ahead of Luke Santos, has just passed that 587 car, so I think he had to do a little bit of battling there as Travis Worling now hits the pit lane. For Challoner, by the way, it was a 20.8 second stop. That's significantly faster than stops like we saw for Dan Stevens and such. Let's see what it is here for Worling. Is he able to come out around 20 seconds, or does he take closer to 23 or 24? It's going to be closer to 24.25 for Worling. So has Challoner potentially underfueled this time, either expecting another safety car or understanding that he might have to save? Because he could, if he's able to certainly, leapfrog Banfield and Dowd, if he's actually able to pull that off, he could try and control the pace over the mountain and actually get a little bit of fuel saving, hoping that they won't try and challenge him in these tighter curves. I don't know, that seems like a slight stretch. Here's Banfield. He's going to pit, and that's going to bring Dowd as well. So a 2-lap difference in this strategy. They wanted to get clear of the halfway point in this little run from the restart to now, or to the end rather.
And I'm going to throw this out there real quick. If we look at the time gap, Challoner was within 37 seconds of these two leaders. He could pull a pass here just on this undercut. It may work.
Challoner's time in the pit lane was 43.8 seconds. I would expect these guys to take around the same amount of time. We'll see for Ross Banfield. He was the race leader. Let's see how this works out. For Challoner, it was 20.8 seconds. For Ross Banfield, what's it going to be? 20 comes and goes, just over 20.05. Challoner does lap faster and does make the pass, and Dowd gets ahead of Challoner, or Banfield even. Dowd is down and away in 19.23 seconds. So we've just taken the top three and flipped them.
Absolutely wonderful strategy from Challoner. I can't lie, I am impressed that worked.
Frankly, it was them going 2 laps longer that I think did it. If it was 1 lap, I don't think it would have happened. He's only a second ahead of Dowd. And he was, you know, a second faster than they were lapping. So I don't think that would have worked if they had pitted just 1 lap after. He might even be surprised that it paid off.
And if he has to level his head right now. He knows Dowd is a bit faster around here until Challoner pulled the fastest lap. But it makes me wonder if maybe Challoner was holding back some pace early in the race.
Possibly.
I guess we're about to find out.
Yeah, we talked about Challoner being significantly behind these two at one point. I mean, it was 8 seconds, maybe even more, at one point in time. And then that last run, he was able to push and keep up. So was he hiding pace in the early goings, waiting on the safety car, knowing there would be a possibility of resetting and getting back after it? Or has he just found a different line or something? I don't know. It's hard to explain, frankly. I'm looking forward to talking to him. Hopefully he finishes top 3 at the very least.
Do you see that gap going up? I mean, I could see Challoner running away with it. It is cold tires.
Yeah, cold tires. I was going to say. These guys are on cold tires. Give them a couple of laps. Let their tires hit temperature. And then they will technically have better tires by 2 laps all the way to the end now. But how much is that advantage? I don't know that it's going to be significant enough to actually get them around him. It's going to take a conceded effort, I think, between both of them, maybe. I mean, certainly slipstream is a big deal. The chase is always a passing opportunity here.
And Dowd is within a second of Challoner, so he is getting a little bit of something, as is Banfield. But is it going to be enough?
Time will tell. This has become a much more interesting race, I'll be honest. And I am here for it. This is completely shaking things up. We're going to go ahead and show a lap comparison between your top 4, just for reference. Now, of course, for Dowd and Banfield, their last lap is so much slower because that was their outlap out of the pit lane. But what this shows, and we'll use it again the next lap as well, Dowd, by the way, is starting to run Challoner back down, but it shows Challoner, he hit that best lap at a 207.79, but he's already starting to slow down, 208.47. Is that him trying to stay efficient with tires and not burn them up too fast? I mean, what is that? I don't know. He was a little offline there into Forest Elbow, and if we take this back down and show just the gap between them, look at that, Dowd within a half second. I know we were quick to sing Challoner's praises, but this is certainly far from over.
It's going to come down to both the slipstream and Challoner's defensive game in the corner, especially in the start and later parts of this lap. I think that's going to be the decider. And if Banfield plays nice with Dowd, if Banfield really wants to take that second place there, it's going to slow Dowd down.
Yeah, Banfield is the wild card in all of this. We know what Challoner and Dowd are capable of. We know they're fighting for the championship, but Banfield is the complete wild card in this top 3. And look at that, lap traffic ahead. Let's bring that lap comparison back up. Last lap, Challenger a 208.9. Banfield just ripped off a 207. That was his fastest lap of the race. Dowd as well. Fastest lap of the race for him. And look at that. Dowd checks out to the left side of the racetrack. Starts to put his headlights in the mirror of Christian Challenger. I don't think he's going to wait. I think we realize at this point we are down around 15 laps to go. It's go time.
I think Dowd's just pushing for a mistake out of Challenger here. I think if Challenger keeps out of his mirrors and he focuses on the track, he'll be good through this bound bit, but he has to get defending coming out of the chase.
It's almost like Nathan is calling Christian's bluff, right? Like, okay, you're going to make this strategy call. You're going to get ahead. Now I'm going to make you prove that you've got that pace to stay ahead. I'm going to call your bluff. I'm going to challenge you, put myself in your mirrors, and see if you make a mistake or if you can hold up. Slow car ahead. This is going to hold up, down, and even Banfield a little bit. That creates some separation, but now Challenger's stuck behind a slower car. That first car, I think, was Bryce Roberts. This other car now is, I can't tell. Not entirely sure who that was, but the pass has been made. It's now irrelevant. They got out of the way.
And this is the furthest apart they've been all lap, just a single lap. So that's what traffic can do to you, especially scary traffic that looks like it's in the wall. It can definitely give you a gap there.
Problems for a driver we were paying attention to most of the day, Dalton Fredericks. We saw the lap 1 incident for him. This is in a turn 2. Oh dear, that's a big one with he and Brenton Foster. Foster's going to be slow with damage after that as well, and you can see Fredericks done.
Yeah, I think that's a race over for Fredericks. You see that tire not moving. I mean, I don't think he'll be able to bring it back around.
He tried to keep going, gets to the outside of the cutting here, it looks like, so he's out of the way and takes the tow. And this is unfortunate. I know HSR Phantom has been showing well, of course, with the 24-ish hours of Road Atlanta and with Frederick's performances here in the Major Series. They have looked really good. This really sucks for Fredericks. Wow. This was the battle at the time. You can see the position marker on the, I guess, top left corner, or from that perspective, top right corner of the windshield. This was for 11th and 12th. Foster technically moves over into Fredericks. I would have to guess that Fredericks protests this, and I would think that he might win that one.
It's a little bit of both there. I mean, I think Fredericks there just turned in and didn't quite have the space he thought he was going to have, and the car on his inside didn't quite turn in either. And I think it just, well, it led to this.
It's a really big hit. That's one of the faster parts of the racetrack. When these guys get to 180 miles per hour down the Conrad straight into the chase, that little run into turn 2 is pretty close to that. And Brenton Foster has now taken to the pit lane as well to take a fast repair and get back on the racetrack. So that shows you just how damaging that was to Foster's race as well. He's had to take to the pit lane himself. Here's our leaders in the chase, lap 68 of 81.
Challenger's still holding on to it.
For now.
I mean, even if he loses the lead here, I'd call that quite impressive. And the fact that Down and Banfield went 2 laps and made it work, that's kind of lucky.
This definitely is impressive from Christian, no matter the result. To have made this pass through the pit lane and even create the situation. But here we go. Dowd looks. No dice into turn 2, but Challenger now takes the shallow entry. That's going to give Dowd a run, but I mean, how aggressive do you get here? 13 laps to go, racing for a championship at Bathurst. I don't think you challenge here. Not side by side like this. You're the driver who has the advantage in the points. Challenger, I would give him some reason to get side by side, but if you're down, I wouldn't risk it. It's for a championship, but at the same time, I don't know with drops. I don't know if Dowd would even lose any points in the overall standings, even if he finishes exactly where he is and Challenger wins this race. Slow traffic.
Ooh, some traffic, yay. I will say, the start of the mountain is definitely a better spot to pass. It's when you get down to this downhill portion. Don't even think about it, honestly.
And this is the 23rd place, Sebastian Jackson ahead of these drivers. He now gets out of the way, force elbow, never mind! Cuts back down across Christian Challenger. I don't think he meant to do that necessarily. He just kind of ended up there. I think he might be along for the ride, more or less, with all the damage to his number 87, but regardless, did impact these leaders a little bit. I think the end result is negligible. And so they are stacked up into the chase. Opportunity for Dowd to the inside. He sits back. He's certainly got in the mirrors, though, of Challenger. He keeps poking his nose just to the inside, making sure Christian knows he's there. Is this an opportunity down here in Murray's? Yes! Dowd looks to the inside. He gets alongside. This is a straight-up fight for the lead. Dowd sends it on Challenger. Pass is made, but here comes Banfield. And Ross Banfield going to have the apex here at turn 1. He makes that pass back, but Challenger goes back through. Absolutely thrilling racing between our top 3, but could Ross Banfield be out to the races now?
Beautiful racing, just like I was saying way earlier in this race about another few sets of passes. Wonderful racecraft, beautiful planning from Banfield, wonderful patience from Challenger, knowing to take that inside line along with Banfield to get past Dowd here. The question is going to be, can Challenger get past Banfield and take the win and keep Dowd behind? And that would definitely hurt the points just a little bit.
You know, based on this, we talk about the parallels between NASCAR racing and supercar racing. Based on this, admittedly, I'm a NASCAR guy. I come from oval racing. That's my background. I want to see a stock car race here. Based on seeing these supercars around here properly for my first time, I want to see stock cars around Bathurst for a true test of what they can do. I think it'd be really cool to see. I mean, hell, stock cars go to street courses now, Give it a shot.
I think there probably are a few majors admins in the YouTube chat there. Maybe not talking, but they're listening. And I don't know if the schedule for next year is fully decided. That might be something to consider, guys.
Well, your top 3 still on top of one another. Banfield, Challenger, Dowd. That's the new order. We'll have 11 laps to go, this time across the stripe. Now, we are down nearly to 10 to go. So it's about that time. Do you know what for?
Would I be right to say driver of the day?
You would be absolutely right. Now, 40 laps ago, I might have called you crazy if you wanted to put Christian Challenger in there, just because at the time, it was, an 8-second gap from him up to these two that he's racing with? But now, Christian Challenger has to be on there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Challenger's there, 100%. I don't know if I could put Banfield and Dowd there. They've kind of hogged the top the whole time. They've had good racing, absolutely wonderful racing, don't get me wrong. But they haven't been doing much else. As we see Dowd look on the inside of Challenger.
That was optimistic for sure. Not exactly a passing zone, but I think it's shaken Challenger just enough here where Dowd might be able to get him into a mistake. Oh, Miz, if Christian makes a mistake and you're on his back bumper, do you get involved in that mistake? That's the scary part of it. But what I've done here on the ticker is I've brought up positions gained. So on the right side of that graphic, you can now see how many spots each of these drivers have gained since the start of the race. If it was me and I was choosing alone, I think I would take the top 3 and then throw in Chris Willard, who's up 14 spots since the start of the race. But I'm curious here, Blue. We each get 2 nominations. Who have you got for your 2 nominations here for the North American Racing League Driver of the Day conversation?
Okay, well, immediately from you, I'm taking Challoner. I treat this like it's a draft. I'm taking Challoner from you immediately. That's just... The pit strategy was wonderful. He was patient at the right times, and he knew when to push. I think that's quite the ability, and the ability of a champion, honestly. My second pick's a lot harder. Initially, I was going to go with a 642, who's had a solid drive today. But, I might go with Banfield. That is also driven quite consistently and honestly wonderfully, keeping it with Dowd and getting past Challoner and currently position 1.
There you go. We will add Christian Challoner and Ross Banfield to the vote. I'm going to go ahead and take Nathan Dowd. And I know he hasn't necessarily lit the world on fire here today. No, he started on pole, and I'm going to bring him his graphic here, the stats. Only 13 laps led. Started on pole. Maybe he should have been in the lead more today, and maybe he could be losing some points to Christian. I don't know, but it's a lot of pressure for Nathan, and he's talked about the pressure and the unknowns of these last couple of rounds for him. Feeling like he was going to be okay here today, but maybe not so much in the Super Formula round at Suzuka. So that's a lot of pressure to make the most out of this race today. I'm, for that reason, going to keep him in here because I can only imagine what's reeling through his mind right now with all of this going on for the championship. It cannot be calm in that cranium currently for driver number 7. So I'm going to give him a nod. I'm also, straight off the positions gained, going to go for Chris Willard. I mean, he is up 14 spots. Yes, he was just drifting there at a turn number 2. But 9th position started, what would that be? 23rd. He gets the wall, make that 10th. So 13 spots gained. Don't tell me I've just...
Oh, man.
I haven't typed his name yet.
I will say, nonetheless,
I think
14
he's okay.
positions at any point of the race is still incredible and honestly thought pick. I was thinking of taking Willard, but I couldn't justify it compared to Banfield and Challenger.
Yeah, I think he's okay. I'm going to keep Chris Willard in there. Even if he has a problem now, I think for being up 14 spots at any point in time, that's deserving of a nomination for Driver of the Day, so he's in the list. That is now live over on YouTube. You can vote for the North American Racing League Driver of the Day. Now back to what's happening here. The top 3 are going by Wayne Hutchison, it looks like. Now Hutchison is known for running a lot of these races across regions, international, European, and Americas. And if you are new to the major series, maybe you haven't heard us talk about that yet, especially if you tuned in halfway through the broadcast. But there are 3 time slots for these races. So I would say it would be... Well, I lost my train of thought, actually, because I looked over and Jimbo Pfeiffer was talking about stuff, and Caster Curse and everything, yes. But, back to my original point. We have the 3 races each weekend for these major races. International, European, we cover Americas, but there's one driver who has kind of come out of the woodworks to run all 3 this weekend as well, and that is Daniel Stevens. We have not seen him previously, that I can recall, in the Americas region, maybe once or twice. Maybe that's why I don't recall his name. But I know he ran International and European. He is running all 3. And I'm going to have to double check if he's the only one. Because we often have, drivers do all 3 regions. A couple anyways. In this case, Wayne Hutchison, I believe, is doing all 3. And Dan Stevens is doing all 3. And that is sheerly remarkable. That's a Bathurst 1500 spread out over the course of the weekend. That is incredible.
Each race being about roughly 9 hours between each other. I think there's a bit of a bigger gap between European and international, or not international, and the Americans here. You gotta wonder, how are they sleeping? Do they usually take a little power nap, or do they just stick it out, you know?
Great points, by the way, in the YouTube chat. I am reading through and trying to keep up to date on that. Great points on everything we've talked about in the last 5-10 minutes or so. Whether it's the driver of the day vote, whether it's the Iron Man going out to Wayne Hutchison. He's the only, I think, Iron Man for the season-long category at this point in time, but other drivers have been running all 3 races in separate rounds. Of course, Dan Stevens, one of them here this weekend. Another driver who would have been certainly worth mentioning in the driver of the day conversation would actually have been Brian Bennett. He started 16th, but look at that low position. Since being down in 28th spot, he's actually gained 16 spots. Now, of course, there was that safety car in there, Blue, but that is huge. To be up to 12th now, after at one point being 28th, maybe that's, maybe that could have been a nominee. Maybe Brian could have been in there instead of Chris, now that Chris has headed down the order since I, of course, cursed him. I mentioned, I went to talk about him and right there into the wall in the cutting, but Brian Bennett, I think, is an honorable mention here today.
You're just like the keyword.
What's that?
Quiet.
Yeah.
If you don't know, you never say that if you work within like the EMS level of way, if that makes sense. Or if you're in theater. I actually forgot what the play was. There was a play name that you also never say. I'm thinking your driver of the day nominations are just quite similar to that. Just kind of a bit unlucky, but
yeah. As soon as I mention them, something goes wrong. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. My fiance Kayla, she's sometimes in the YouTube chat. She's an avid Grey's Anatomy fan, and I can recall at a couple of times watching with her when they're working in the ED. You never say it's quiet in the ED. Because as soon as you do, there's patients all around with broken arms and everything. So, yeah, I get what you're saying there. I get what you're putting down. As soon as I mentioned Willard, boom, problem for him. It's just crazy how that works out sometimes. And, that's the challenge, I feel like, of broadcasters, that people don't always understand. Is we want to mention these stories around the field sometimes, but we know just the way it goes, as soon as we do, is going to be the one time that driver has a mess up and they end up in the wall or something. And in this case, that was absolutely true for Chris Willard. I finally mentioned the run he's had today, and boom, straight in the concrete barrier. So it is what it is. That's how it goes.
And for the theater geeks who might be upset, I remember the name. Macbeth is the name of the play I was thinking of.
Uh-huh. Well, we're approaching 6 laps to go. I want to thank everybody for watching so far this evening. We are right down to the end of it, and I don't think this is over. I think Christian Challenger still has a chance. I mean, it's going to take a really masterful run through Forest Elbow down the Conrad Straight, I think, to set up a pass into the chase, and then that, of course, sets up for everything through the front stretch, Murray's Corner, Hell's Corner. But if Christian can just hang in there a little bit longer, time it right, maybe, just maybe, he can still usurp that top spot and get this win, and throw in Nathan Dowd for that matter as well. He can still time this right and try and get up to second, but if you do get to second, do you then alienate yourself and hold yourself back by virtue of being in a battle and just lose too much time? There's still a lot to be decided just amongst this top 3, and there's still the whole rest of the field, and I hate it for the rest of the field. There's so much going on with this top 3 being so close. We've neglected them the rest of the broadcast. But I gotta say, this whole field has done a fantastic job today. We still have 28 cars running. That's a lot to ask of a 30-car field.
And I mean, just about any time you've moved away from the top 3, the camera's cut somewhere else, or we've seen somewhere else in the broadcast, there's always something going on. Always a fight, always a risky run down through the mountain. It's wonderful, honestly. This is, in my opinion, one of the peaks of racing.
Here's a teammate fight. You mentioned something always happening around the racetrack. That has been absolutely true. Here you go. Bryce Roberts and Sebastian Jackson run down the Conrad Straight. There's traffic ahead. Jackson stays ahead. Roberts relents. So that will not change hands. That's 23rd spot. And how hard do you want to battle with your teammates here? Maybe keep it fun, lighthearted, but you don't want to go for anything crazy. if you're battling your teammate, if you're Bryce Roberts here, so you don't want to, throw a crazy move there into the chase by any means. That car ahead, by the way, is going to be Dalton Fredericks. And there you go. Those guys are now battling behind, side by side to turn 1. Roberts on the inside, contact almost as Sebastian Jackson gets sideways.
See a little bit of a lock smoke back there. That was dangerous. That could just be an entire team out of contention right then and there.
And we almost saw that in turn 2 earlier. Recall that incident with Roberts and Jackson at that point in time. This, though, is Brenton Foster on Chris Willard. We've just hit about 5 laps to go. Or I think we technically will be once the leaders cross the line next. So we're at 5 to 6 laps to go, if you will. Brenton Foster, though, on Willard. These guys are technically about a half lap to a lap behind the leaders. They've not yet crossed the line to take 6 to go. And of course, we talked about kind of cursing Willard as soon as I went to mention him and being up to 14 spots at that time. He has lost spots. He's now up 10 positions or so. Still a remarkable day, I think, for Chris Willard. I remember talking about him earlier in the race, and he was down around 21st at the time. And he's now up. He was in the top 10. Now he's still, 13th. That's still a remarkable day and turnaround for him, for sure. By the way, I see the banner on this Fusion car for Chris Willard, Sim Racing Stewards. I noticed they started up recently. They followed our Instagram account, actually, and that's how I learned about them, and I've seen an announcement or two made, I believe, in the Majors Discord. That's going to be cool. I think there's some integration going on with them next year. So it's going to be interesting to see how Sim Racing Stewards kind of changes the game here on iRacing for all leagues being open to usage, as Brenton Foster just got crossed up. That was swatting flies up the hill there briefly. And I would argue, Blue, at this stage in the race, that's harder to save now than it was 2 hours ago. You've been racing for nearly 3 hours. It's a lot harder to save when you're this fatigued.
I'd almost say it's a lot harder to push as well, though. You find this middle ground when you're fatigued between pushing the car and saving, because you don't have the full brain power to get as close to the wall or get right on the edge of track limits. So sometimes it's just this weird middle. Of course, there's some drivers who catch a second wind and absolutely rip it in the later part of the race. But for most drivers,
I think I would agree with that as we watch these 3 Chevrolets head down the Conrad Straight. There you see Daniel Krim. That's that car with no front bumper right now. Not sure what he got into, but whatever he got into, it was rather heavy. And did a fair amount of damage. There go our leaders into the chase. We haven't used these cameras much. These are what we call static close cameras throughout the camera pack from Whiplash Sim Cams, and this shows you some really cool vantage points as Daniel Krim is hitting the pit lane. So clearly whatever happened to him must have been relatively recent, as he is now headed to the pits. Here go our leaders across the line to take 4 laps to go.
and it ain't done yet, but I just want to say this race has flown by so quickly. I remember we were predicting about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. It hasn't even been 3 yet, and we were already at 4 to go.
So we are at 3 hours and 12 minutes of broadcast time. Of course, we did start with some ads there in the beginning, but that's still about 3 hours of talking time, I think, for us on air, which is a little under 3 hours then for the race. Probably 2 hours and 45 minutes or 2 hours and 50 minutes or so. But yes, it has flown by. I recall watching the European race earlier, and it just, not being in it and not being invested in it at the time, it felt like it took forever. But once you're invested like this, man, it does go by in a hurry. These are these shots, though, through the mountain. These are a lot of fun to look at. Show you just how fast these guys are going. And it can still change. Here we go. Challenger on the back bumper into Skyline, now down towards the Dipper, challenging Ross Banfield for the race lead. Banfield shakes and shimmies out of the Dipper. All it takes is a good run here in this corner. Forrest elbow to get down this hill. Banfield, though, better on exit. When we hit the stripe, it'll be 3 laps to go. Challenger using every bit of the slipstream down the straightaway to get closer, but not to make a move. That car ahead is Brian Barnes. He's hung on to the lead lap thus far. He is 16th. There's a car about 1.5 seconds ahead of him. That's Nick Kuhn. And they theoretically have some open racetrack. 3 laps to go here at Bathurst. If you're Christian Challenger, Blue, when do you make the move? Do you wait until that last lap so that there's less chance to fire back?
You know, I think you get really desperate on the last lap. I would try to make it before, but I wouldn't just make a move. I would pressuring the whole race, and we have seen Challenger pressuring. You see it just a little bit there. He's running a little bit more on the inside, getting in Banfield's mirror just a bit, letting him know that he's still there. But I'd make it 1 lap before the last. It gives you time. It makes Banfield a little shocked in this case. And he has that 1 lap where he knows he has to reclaim it, and then he gets desperate, and he likely makes a small mistake, and it just lets you run away with it. Of course, that's really hopeful, but
Challenger has backed off a little bit, whether by choice or not. He's now 6/10 back of Ross Banfield. Is he trying to give space maybe for this lap car of Nick Kuhn? Kuhn gets out of the way, maybe not. He actually holds up the race leader of Banfield. Here's the opportunity for Christian Challenger maybe. Bottom right, you see the delta between these two. It's closing. Could this be where Challenger makes the move? He's looking. Yes, Challenger alongside Banfield. Contact between them. Wheel to wheel at the apex there of the chase. More contact. Banfield using every bit of the racetrack, sliding there. Banfield back on the apex here in Murray's corner. 2 laps to go when they hit the stripe. A little more contact. And here comes Dowd.
Dowd's getting held behind Challenger still. Dowd wasn't able to quite do what Challenger did just a handful of laps earlier. And wow, what close racing we just saw.
You see the look from Dowd. He falls back in behind. Oh, that'll get your heart rate up. That'll elevate your blood pressure a little bit. Gives you a little taste of what could happen these final 2 laps, just 2 more times around the Mount Panorama circuit.
You know, if Challenger's taking risks like that around the chase and getting a little contact, it makes me think maybe he will do something up or down the mountain.
I mean, the chase, that's the corner we were talking about, that we have been talking about this whole battle, you know, where you want to make the move, but that definitely didn't seem like a conventional setup. That seemed like a late, well, I don't know, Banfield definitely knew what he was doing, because he took the left side of the racetrack to have the inside at the actual slower apex. So when you think about it, maybe it was a little more conventional than it seemed at the time, but that was definitely scary, and it was all set up by that lap car. The difference now is they head back down the mountain. There's no lap car directly ahead of Ross Banfield, and Banfield has been good at getting out of Forrest Elbow and mitigating the run that Challenger can get. Here we go. Back on board. Banfield drives back away a little bit, but what's the gap actually say? Oh, he's much further back.
But he catches a little bit of the slipstream, so he's not going to fall completely into Dowd's hands here, but still going to be closer.
No attempt this lap, I don't think, though, from Challenger. Certainly not. He's too far back at this point in this lap to make a challenge. So it's all going to have to happen on the white flag lap for Christian Challenger. I reckon if he wants to make any points, if he wants to have any chance of closing in on Nathan Dowd, he's got to pass Banfield and hope that Dowd doesn't follow. That's the only hope he has now, and even that's a long shot because of drops in this round. Or this season, rather. There we go. White flag is out. Brought to you by Whiplash Simcams. One more time around here at Bathurst. The Bathurst 500 into its final few kilometers here.
About 0.2 seconds starting the lap. It's at 0.3 now. See him trying to shake the slipstream off. He knows if he gets a run, it's into this mountain, and Challoner holds on to it coming down. It's that would be the win for Challoner. He doesn't get it as they come up.
Watch Dowd in the right side mirror there. You can just see him behind Challoner. He's not making any kind of move right now. Challoner in the tire tracks of Banfield. Here's the cutting for the final time. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness, the back end of this lap, could directly influence the Major Series America's Championship here in 2025. The impact it's going to have, we don't know just yet. Banfield backs up a little bit. Now down through Skyline, and the S's for the final time. Here comes the Dipper, one more time here in this race.
Way closer than he was the last lap. This could be it. He could get the run.
One more time into Forest Elbow. This is where it matters. This is how you set it up. Challoner a little shallow. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. He's quite a ways back. I think it's Banfield's race. It's not over, but I think this is Banfield's race. We'll see how desperate Christian Challoner is willing to get here into the chase. How aggressive does he get? Christian Challoner knows this is his last opportunity, maybe at Murray's. Maybe if he could just get close enough, maybe he dives at Murray's.
0.2 back, he's within that range.
Final corner now. Christian Challoner has to go. Does he make the step? No, Christian Challoner is going to follow Ross Banfield, who takes victory here at Bathurst. Ross Banfield, Christian Challoner, Nathan Dowd, your top three. Oh, that has got to be so relieving for Ross Banfield. He knows now the race is over. He can breathe. Oh, my goodness. I can only imagine how long he's been holding his breath, knowing what could have been into the chase, into Murray's, that final lap.
You know, I'm just taking some deep breaths. But this was not just a wonderful race, but a wonderful last few laps. I mean, absolutely insane as the rest of the pack finishes up their race. See a little bit of side-by-side.
Battle here. This is Roberts and Vickery into the chase. Final time for their race. They're both 2 laps down. But hey, 23rd spot is still on the line. Vickery trying to get the best of the 21 car. Does he make a last-ditch effort down here at Murray's? He's going to look, but no dice. Bryce Roberts will make it through, and Vickery actually slides, and that's going to allow Sebastian Jackson back through. He slides. A spin for Jackson. Vickery goes back by, and this excitement is all for 23rd as Lionel Callisto goes through. Oh my gosh. Lionel Callisto takes 25th. Sebastian Jackson drops to 26th.
I mean, you just know he had that moment when he slid where he was like, oh, there goes my position. But seeing the other card ahead of you slide, that must have been so relieving. I mean, oh man, that was something.
What a day here at Mount Panorama Circuit. It's still wrapping up. A couple of cars still getting to the line. But let's take a, well, I'm trying to get to the results, but actually, hang on. I might not be able to yet. Willard, hang on, let's come back to live picture. I was ready for the results. I jumped the gun. Willard in the final corner now. Here he comes out of turn number 23. And he'll be the final car to cross. He will wrap up this race. So let the results take a second to finalize potentially. Of course, they're finalizing just for the session. Stewards can make decisions afterwards if they need to. But he is the final car to cross. Now we can go ahead and get ready for these results. Let's go back a little bit. And, boy, what a battle it was at the front of the field. Look at these three. This is into the chase moments ago. But let's take a look at the unofficial race results when it's all said and done here. Ross Banfield, of course, takes the win, as we saw, but man, it was not always looking that way. I mean, he led the most laps, 63. That is a significant portion of the 81 that we ran here today, but Christian Challoner easily could have had it there. Nathan Dowd easily could have had it for a while. And look at how far they were ahead of fourth place Austin O'Neill. Austin finishes fourth, Daniel Stevens fifth. That caps off a successful run, I think, for Dan Stevens across the three regions. And he can now rest. I saw in the YouTube chat, it's a national holiday in New Zealand. He's going to need every bit of it to rest and recuperate before Tuesday morning rolls around. Travis Worling 6th, Tom Abramidis 7th. It'll be Austin Peterson 8th. And I mean, these guys are a minute back of the leaders now. Just sheer domination by those top three. Luke Santos 9th, and Junya Hanma out of Japan complete the top 10 run. Finishing back here, 11th to 20th, you'll find Kenzie Vanderwert in the 643 car. Brian Bennett in 12th. Brenton Foster in 13th. And Chris Willard, might have doomed him a little bit, but he just hangs on to the lead lap technically. He will finish all 81 laps of racing in the 14th spot. Still up 9 positions. That's big for the driver of the 32. Brian Barnes there in 15th. First car 1 lap down. Nick Kuhn in 16th. Daniel Krim, Dale Green, Dalton Fredericks, and Nate Provost all 1 lap down. I don't think that run, that result is at all indicative of the speed the 45 had, but I have to settle for that position after all. Chris Sherburne there in 21st. Wayne Hutchison continuing the Ironman challenge of 2025, if you will. 22nd spot. Bryce Roberts in that great battle to the end with Shane Vickery, finishes 23rd. Vickery crosses 24th, but that doesn't tell you the whole story of what just happened in that final corner with Lionel Callisto and Sebastian Jackson, who finished behind at 25th and 26th. Richard McClure hangs on at 27th, and Joseph Cardamone gets home to the finish, albeit 8 laps down in 28th. Only 2 cars out early. Those are Finley White and Joseph Homan. Drivers are starting to fill in and join us for conversation. It might be a little bit too late for Christian Challoner, but we'll talk to our race winner first up. That is Ross Banfield, who hangs on over 2 of the best, the 2 fighting for the championship, that is. Ross, how relieved were you to get to that checkered flag finally at the end of 81 laps?
I couldn't come soon enough, man. That was rough. I was fighting for my life there.
That had to be, I don't even know the word to describe it. That had to be stressful, I suppose, for sure, those last few laps. But let's go back to how it all set up. Christian undercuts you guys. Why did you stay out 2 laps longer and let him get that advantage?
To be honest, I didn't realize the undercut. My plan was to go in with 5 to go for like a lighter undercut, because I wanted to save my tires to really push towards the end. But then I checked my relative and I saw Christian was missing from it, and so then I was like, oh, he must have pitted, and I just dove in the next lap, and that's kind of how that worked out.
And that just happened to be the lap that Dowd came in. Do you think that was planned for him to match you, or what was going on there?
Oh yeah, if I had to guess, he was trying to go 1 for 1. I think he realized Christian did the undercut, and then once he saw me going for it, he realized it was probably the best thing to do.
And it looks like we might be down Christian, so I'll ask you an extra question here this evening. Ross, how tired are you? How tired are your arms specifically? And your legs, I suppose. A lot of foot inputs too. 81 laps here, 3 hours of racing. That's no easy feat.
Actually, it's more of my my left knee, because my brake pedal's set to 45 kg.
Oh my
gosh.
So
it's I should have made it a little less sensitive, but yeah, my knee was starting to ache towards the end. It was getting hard to press the brakes. I was just like, I saw like 10 to go, and then it just felt like every lap felt like it was doubling. 5 to go, and then 2 to go. That felt like an eternity.
Well, that is win number 2 for you on the year. As far as top split goes, Ross, congratulations. 63 laps led. I think it's easy to say you were the best one here today. Congrats.
Thank you.
Ross Banfield, a big win here in the Bathurst 500. Stayed out front for 63 laps. The guy who was chasing him in the early portion of the day, Blue, that was Nathan Dowd. We'll bring in Nathan Dowd for comment here. 3rd place finisher, Nathan. Of course, the championship battle had to be on your mind all 81 laps, but how much more prominent was it in those last, 10, 15 following Christian?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was just trying not to, throw it into the wall those last few laps. We were all running really hard. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's really tight. I knew if he ended up winning, that'd be really bad for me. Luckily, he didn't win, but I don't know, I made one move on him. I think I had a little bit of a pace advantage, but once you get behind someone here, it's so hard to pass. So I had an opportunity at the last corner there with, like, I don't know, 10 or so to go, and took it and thought I had it done, and Ross took advantage of it, and kind of reshuffled us back again. But that was a lot of fun. I'm not quite sure where it's all going to shake out points wise. I know it's going to be really close. I think it's basically going to be which of the two of us, finish ahead of the other in the last race here, most likely. So I'm not sure. I'd have to go look at, like, how the drops plan, how that all works. But I think I have at least one good drop that I can use if I have to. But I don't want to have to rely on that. So yeah, it was a lot of really fun race. So those guys it was really hard just to hang with them there at the end.
And of course, we've talked points, we've talked versatility all season long. Let's throw out the points, because realistically, it's hard for our human minds to gather what all is going to happen with the drops, and we'll let that play out and see what the standings are when we go into Suzuka in a couple of weeks. So let's just focus on the versatility side. Suzuka, Super Formula cars. I know you've talked about it being maybe a weakness of yours going into this last round. So what have you done? Have you done any practice yet? Or how much practice will you be doing going into that final round to make sure you are as ready as possible to defend that points lead?
Yeah, no practice yet. It's been all supercars for the last 2 weeks or so, because that was a new car to me too. So, I bought the supercar 2 weeks ago. Just been kind of running it as much as I can. I feel like I got to a good place with it. So I had some experience with the old supercar, so that helped a lot, and I knew the track. So Super Formula, same kind of story here. So now shift gears to that, probably take a couple of days break and then get cracking on that. So I gotta buy the car, and luckily Suzuka's everybody knows Suzuka, so I know what I'm doing there. But I mean, it's a fast open wheel car. I don't know, I've done F1, I've ran F1 rounds before. I feel like I could get up to speed there. Just gonna have to learn. I think there's some intricacies with, like, there's a push to pass, overtake button, whatever. I have to learn how that works, but in the end, it's a lot of downforce, a lot of open wheel. So I mean, I haven't done a ton of open wheel, like I said before, but I don't know. I'm sure I can get up to speed. It's one of the things I like about this series, and what I think has made me somewhat competitive in this series, is just my ability to kind of jump into new cars and get up to speed pretty quickly. And then once I can do that, and just see how consistent I can get. And so it'll be pretty non-stop here probably for the next few weeks until the race. And we'll see how it shakes out.
A lot to learn for sure, even for us in the broadcast booth. It'll be a bunch of unknowns, just like tonight was, but best of luck to you, Nathan. It's been a lot of fun to watch you through 11 rounds so far. Best of luck in the 12th.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Nathan Dowd, tons of fun to watch all year long so far here in 2025. He finishes third, right behind this next gentleman who we're bringing to you, Blue. It's Christian Challoner.
I mean, absolutely wonderful racing, Challoner. Challoner, how are you feeling after these 500 kilometers at Bathurst?
It was really good fun, and I had a really good time, and I wasn't expecting to at all. I've been pretty sick the past 2 days, including today. So I was like going into this thinking, this is gonna be really rough. I'm gonna feel really bad. And I think I'm going to in about 30 minutes time. But it was really good fun. I kind of got better as the race went on. I wasn't really expecting to have a chance at even trying to fight for the win. I think if there hadn't been the safety car, I wouldn't have had a chance, because to be honest, that it was the middle run or the first run. I know I dropped back a little bit, but then I think it was the middle run where the top two were just... I don't know what really was going on there, but they were just way faster than me that run, and I kind of conceded. I was happy with third. I was in a pretty good spot there. Yeah, it was way more fun than I thought it would be. It was a great battle.
Well, you were happy with third, but you got second. Due to what I could say, me and Andrew up here were talking a lot about your pit stop plan on about lap 60. Why did you pit at that time? Why did you think going for the undercut was good?
Passing was really difficult. It took me forever to really pass Austin on that first run. Even then, when we'd been behind lap cars, it'd been really tough to pass. And I was in that group with Nathan and Ross, and I was just like, there was a couple of times where I was like, oh, maybe I could get a run. But every time I would look at it, I was like, you had to really commit to it to kind of pull it off. And I was fine doing that, just not at that point in the race. And I kind of thought, well, probably going to have a chance to do one of those high commitment moves like one time through the race and have it go your way. And, with two cars in front of me and two guys that have been really fast, I was like, it just didn't seem likely that if I did the same thing as them, then, anything was going to happen. And I just felt like if I could come out in a good spot on my own for maybe like 1-2 laps, that I could potentially get ahead of them and then maybe defend it. So that was really the thought. The thought was, I'm not going to beat them by copying them. I'm going to do something else. And it very nearly worked.
It almost did. Now, I think my final question for you, driving away from this race and looking forward to next race and the overall points, how are you feeling about Suzuka, and do you think you're going to win the championship there?
I don't know, if I'm completely honest with you. I felt like coming into this is probably a better opportunity than Suzuka is for me, but then obviously looking at qualifying and everything, I was like, oh well, I'm kind of behind the ball, and then really halfway through the race I was still behind. So if this was one which was probably my better chance, I mean, I guess it did work out to some extent, right? Because I will have gained some points on Nathan, and I think it is pretty much still the case that whichever one of us wins the last one, or if Ross is there again, whichever one of us probably finishes second, probably wins. So I don't know, to tell you the truth. I've had decent pace in those single seaters in the past. Ross has always been ridiculously good in them. It's possible, right? I hope at least I won't feel sick when I do the next race. That'll be probably the biggest bonus I can have. So, yeah, it's possible. It definitely feels doable now, that's for sure. I think going into this race, I was, before I saw practice and qual and everything, I thought it was doable, and then I saw that and I thought it wasn't, and then, the last run of the race, I thought it was doable again. So I think a lot of it really is the thinking that it's possible, and I'm leaning towards that. I think it is possible now. So yeah, we'll see. But I think whatever happens, it's been a really good season, and I liked what we had there at the end, right, where there was all three of us there. I made my play, Nathan made his play, Ross kind of got the better of it. It was good. It was good that we were going for it, right? Trying to win, trying to just win the race. I know there's probably some points consideration and whatnot with Nathan, but I like that he went for the move on me. I mean, I don't like that it didn't work out for me, but I like that he still felt like he could do it. And yeah, it was fun. This is good racing. It really was.
Alrighty, well, I'll let you go get yourself some water or whatever you do when you're sick. Absolutely fabulous race. Well done.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Feel better, Christian.
Thanks.
Christian Challoner, burning the midnight oil. I know it's late for him. It's got to be a challenge when you're sick and in an alternative, in this case, European time zone to run these America races. But props to Christian Challoner getting it done. That's all, folks, as far as cars in the racetrack here tonight. Boy, what a show it was. Big shout out to all of these drivers. What a day. It was a really solid race. A lot of clean racing. Very few on-track incidents through the entirety of these 500 kilometers. There is only one driver, though, who can win driver of the day here today, and it's going to be one. I'm really glad he gets the votes, because frankly, after I doomed him into hitting the barrier, I was scared that Chris Willard wasn't going to win driver of the day, but he does. You guys came through for driver number 32, and Chris Willard is today's driver of the day. That is awesome. He was up so many spots, 14 spots at the time that we nominated him, and of course then it was into the barrier and down a few spots for him, but Chris put together a really, really good race to go from down to the 20s at one point up into the top 10 at one point in the day, and I'm glad that it still worked out for Chris to get driver of the day, because I really do feel like he's deserving. I like highlighting these kinds of runs, deeper in the field, guys still working on getting up to that top echelon of the field. This feels good. Chris Willard, North American Racing League driver of the day here today in the Majors Americas round at Bathurst. Of course, only one round to go here, Blue. One more time for us in 2025. We're going to be at Suzuka, Super Formula cars. I've recently done a Super Formula broadcast, but it was with the Finnish Sim Racing Association, and I had no clue what the commentators were saying. I was just pressing buttons, producing the thing. Ostian Puhaka, who was on the broadcast today for the Majors European round for GSRC, he was commentating, but in Finnish with his broadcast partner over there. So I've still got a lot to learn about this Super Formula car, especially at Suzuka Circuit, but I am looking forward very much to learning these next couple of weeks about this car and just getting that race done on November 16th and finally learning who our 2025 champion is going to be. So one more race to go here in the Major Series in 2025, and it's all coming down to a close, not only for the Major Series, but as well as other series across the landscape of motorsport. One series that just got started up, though, is the BRB Sundance Pro Series. It's round 3 this coming Tuesday at Richmond Raceway, just a couple of days away. October the 28th, we go racing at a short track with ARCA cars. It's going to be a lot of fun. Then they come back a week later and go to a road course, a street course even, at Long Beach with those same cars. So the BRB Sundance Pro Series, the next 2 broadcasts here on the channel. The final race that we have of October, the first that we'll have in November. Then we go short track racing once again with the Sim Auto Racing Association Pierce Fleet Service Super Series. That's going to be a lot of fun when they head to IRP. They have one round in between now and then. It'll be a mystery race on Thursday, October the 30th, but we, unfortunately, will be out of town and cannot broadcast that one here at Broadcast HQ, so they will be off air for that one, but looking forward to getting back with them at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park on November the 6th, and of course, getting back to it with the Major Series on November 16th. For the final round of 2025 when we head out for the Japanese Grand Prix. Blue, one more time, what a fantastic race. Great way to wrap things up here today, and I'm looking forward to Suzuka.
I cannot wait for Suzuka. I mean, one of my favorite tracks, one of my favorite cars. I'm a super big fan of Formula racing, especially like Formula Ones and stuff. So getting to commentate over it is honestly mind-breaking to me. Especially at, like I said, one of my favorite tracks. I love them all, but that anytime I see that come up on the calendar, I get so excited.
It was a great day today here at Bathurst. Would not have been possible without the Majors Series and Majors Garage. Also, big thank you to our partners, Whiplash SimCams, ATVO, CC's Business, Cody Williams Design, Lucky Performance, and the North American Racing League. That'll do it for us here today at Mount Panorama Circuit, otherwise known simply as Bathurst or the Mountain. It was good to make our return. It's been a while since we've been here. Glad we were able to make a fun show out of it. Glad you guys all watched. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you all next time when we head out to Richmond Raceway with the BRB Sundance Pro Series this coming Tuesday, or for race number 12 of the Major Series, that'll be November 16th. Super Formulas, Japan, you've got to be there. We'll see you there.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Anybody really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.